They're looking at calendars, they're looking at the number of days blocked and the price that that calendar was before it was blocked, and they're saying, oh, you probably sold 3 days at 650. But you might have only had a 2-night sale and then you're blocking 2 days off. It might not actually be accurate, so we're looking for consistent reviews especially during high season. I want to see 3 and 4 reviews on their calendar during high season. Now this gets more complicated because people are listed on multiple platforms. Most hosts are just on Airbnb and have most of their reviews on Airbnb, but sometimes they're on VRBO as well, so I need to check both sites across the reviews. And some of the biggest homes and like the 8-9 bedroom cabins in Gatlinburg, they often are run by property managers that have direct booking sites as well. So it can be difficult if the direct booking manager is really good at getting bookings. You might not see as many consistent reviews, and you might want to throw that out. But this is honestly the most important part of starting to analyze a market, is cleaning it. So once we've removed all the bad data, less than 20 reviews, less than 250 days availability, we're going to go through and we're just going to make notes. So you're going to have to click into every Airbnb listing and you're going to become an expert on what makes them tick. So the notes that you're going to make, it's going to be across as many things as you can note on them. Typically what I like to note, I like to list all the amenities, the cool amenities that they have. I like to grade the Airbnb on the quality of their photos, the quality of their marketing. And you're really just trying to like contain as many notes as possible. Amazing views, modern, nice listing, or if they have bad photos, you should note that. And this is just notes that you're gonna use when you find a property to go back and compare it against everybody out there. And if you're in Chicago, this is a lot of work. There's 5,000 listings. But you can narrow this down. You can remove like the 1-bedrooms, you could remove the 10-bedroom listings. But you really just need to make notes on every feature and amenity, the quality of their photos, the quality of their design, so you can use to go back. And one of my little secrets that I've brought in that I love to do is I find that Airbnb on Zillow. I go, because there's a dot on Airbnb and VRBO on the map. It's not always an exact dot, but sometimes it is. And if it's an exact dot, I'll go on to Zillow or I'll have my VA do it, and we'll create a column for what the Zestimate is. And there's a relationship. If you do this enough times across enough markets like I have, I call it this yield curve. And the top graphs are the relationship of yield to purchase price. And the bottom 2 graphs are revenue versus purchase price. So just a different way of transforming it. But if you look at the bottom left, like revenue versus purchase price, you can see that as the purchase price grows to $2 or $3 million, you lose this linear relationship of revenue. It starts to plateau off. And then you can draw these yield curves like I've drawn, the upper and lower bounds of homes. This is West Palm Beach. And this is the relationship between values and how much people are estimated to make. And you can start to find sweet spots. You can be like, wow, people that are buying homes over $1.5 million rarely make the 20% you need to cash flow. So maybe I should stay away from those. And it looks like homes in the $500,000 to $1 million range, I have plenty of examples of people making 20%. So I'm gonna go study those listings that I could buy today at their current valuation, where I could earn the magic number. And those listings, especially the people that sit on the top of the yield curve, the $1 million homes that make $200K instead of the $1 million homes that make $100K, those are the people that you need to study, and those are your competitors that are McDonald's in your market. And it's even possible to produce a unit that breaks off of an existing yield curve. That's what I've done in some markets, like a unit that makes so much money compared to its purchase price, more than anyone has in your market. And it's definitely possible, but it's difficult in more competitive markets. So once I've done that, I like to graph all this data. So whether I have AirDNA or PriceLabs data, I have latitude and longitude. And I'll throw that at the top left as a heat map of revenue. This is the San Antonio market I was building a buy box for. The bottom left is a heat map of the most profitably identified Airbnbs, people that are making at least 20%. The top right is the yield curve of the market, the relationship between yields and prices. And the bottom right is just a scatter plot of all the existing people out there. So the yellow circle is what I think is the most profitable place to buy an Airbnb in San Antonio, which is a $250,000, I think up to a $500,000 house. And I see dozens of examples of people making 25 to 30%, gross revenue relative to the purchase price, which is enough to cash flow and do great. And I know where they are. I know San Antonio because I've analyzed it, but there's two main attractions in San Antonio. There's SeaWorld and there's Six Flags, and they're both family-oriented places. There's also downtown in the Alamo. So there's kind of this like golden triangle, but most of the people that are making a lot of money are in this arc around San Antonio near the two major theme park attractions. So that kind of made sense to me as well. Right, so we've identified the purchase price. Oops, I'm going backwards, sorry. Right, so after we've found the locations that work, we need to start a document and we just need to write things down. We're gonna filter by home, number of bedrooms, and we're gonna write the features that we see. 3 bedrooms, homes that are doing really well typically have a pool, they have a large living room, they have nice design. The 4-bedroom homes have a second living room, they have a bigger backyard. I think they could make from X to Y amount of revenue. You need to start determining which features relative to sizes, what are the interior aspects, what are the backyard things that you see people doing when they're hitting 20%. And you'll find a consistent pattern, but then you're gonna put that all together in a document, which is what we do. You're gonna wrap the buy box together, you're gonna pull some images of what the top Airbnbs look like, you're gonna put your graphs together, and then you're gonna have a really nicely clean document that you understand. And you say, this is how I invest in San Antonio, or wherever you're interested in investing in. So now we have a buy box, we've cleanly reviewed the data, we've pinpointed the most profitable areas, we have the features, and we've created the buy box. But the best is always talking to a local. Like here, you're in Chicago here, and you can learn so much about how much people make just by asking someone, how much do you make, what are some good areas, who are the guests that you're targeting. This is always the gold standard, is talk to an Airbnb host or a realtor or an investor when you're making the buy box. And now we can actually start to hunt for properties on Zillow. Now you're ready to open Zillow, not before. So using the top location, this is a different market, but using the location that you know works the best, the location that you know is the most profitable, and using the range of home prices that you need to stay in to hit 20%, you're gonna create your filters, you're gonna draw your map on Zillow, you're gonna put your only up to 600K, and your bedrooms, and you're gonna start actually finding properties. And once you've created that search range, you're gonna try to find the lowest price property that would still meet your criteria, the lowest price 4-bedroom that's still in that area. And what I look for is blank slate backyards. And I'll show you guys a lot about my amenity data later, but the more space we have to do amenities in the backyard, the better. If it's kind of an ugly interior, I'm probably gonna be able to purchase it at a better price. So most investors maybe want the turnkey Airbnbs, and those are not gonna produce the most amount of profit for you. So now we've hunted for properties, we've found a property that we like, and we're ready to do an evaluation on that property, which is essentially just a revenue forecast. So we gather the data about the other Airbnbs in that market that we already have, and we're gonna filter them down to, maybe we've identified the 4-bedroom house, and we have a 4-bedroom house, so we're gonna filter to 4s, and then we're gonna start making notes, and you need to logically explain to yourself which properties you can beat and which properties you don't think you can beat, with the bones that you've identified on Zillow and your idea for what it can become. And that's how you're gonna predict your revenue. So what I like to do is I like to stack rank all my competitors from who makes the most to who makes the least. And then I'll make a few columns in my data set. I'll make a column just for notes. I'll make a column for can I beat this property with what I have in my head. And then you'll quickly start to realize that the top 3 properties have indoor pools, they have epic views, their homes look like they're $2 million homes. You probably can't compete with those if you have a $500,000 home. And the homes in the middle, you'll just be like, the marketing gets a little bit worse, the amenities get a little bit worse, and the home prices look like they're in the same location and area as me. And the homes at the bottom, you might notice have like really poor amenities, really poor design. It doesn't look like they're a professional host. You have a high confidence that you can beat that host. So you'll quickly find a place where you're very confident that you can actually hit. But you've made the notes on every property, and you need to make a set of notes on how your property compares to that property. Right? So could you have more amenities than them? Do you have a better location than them? Would you have extra things that they don't have? And so you'll pinpoint, based on the bones and what you are going to do to that property, you can be highly, highly confident in this number. And this is a really, really foolproof way to say, what is the range? So you'll have to justify this to yourself in your document. So you'll create a low number, the 100% number. You'll create a best case and a worst case number. And typically I like there to be about a $50,000 range between my low and my high. The bigger and most luxury the property, the range can stretch to like 75 to 100K. But you're gonna use your comps to justify this, like I just said. You're gonna say comps 1 to 2 cannot be competed with because they're more expensive and more luxury. Comps 2 to 4 probably can be. Comps 7 to 9 can be easily beat. And this is what we do when we do a revenue forecast for clients as well. So the low that you put in, the 100%, is the lowest you might perform within this comp set that you can definitely compete with or beat. And the mid forecast with your planned improvements is slightly higher than all the units that you're really comfortable being able to beat, but lower than the ones with the amenities or marketing or location or a property value that you don't think you can beat. And my high forecast, I typically put as the very top comp that I think I might be able to compete with if I really hit it out of the park. So there we have our low, our mid, and our high forecast for a property, and we really understand the market and the property a lot. And we're gonna go and underwrite that property. I'm sure many of you go through this process yourself, but we're gonna put it through an analyzer sheet. There's many. I could send you an example if you want one after this. But we're gonna put our low, mid, and our high revenue into this, and we're gonna use our expense ratios that are pretty standard and spit out our cash on cash number. And so what I look for in deals is I look for about 10% this year right now in my mid forecast. I want 20 to 30% in my high forecast, and I want to at least break even in my low forecast, 0 to 5. I don't want to see any potential to lose money within the range I'm highly confident in. And this is how we've helped TechVestor. They've never not cash flowed on a property using this kind of method. But I really want to have a really high confidence and a plan for how I can exceed the mid forecast and how I can hit that high forecast. But it's really not all about cash flow. When you think about the 10-year return of a short-term rental, it's about 40% cash flow, 40% appreciation, and 20% immediate tax benefits, rough numbers. And right now, it's not impossible. I just showed you how to get cash flow in a couple different markets, but it is very difficult to find a market that you have a high confidence in the appreciation. Since we're in a massive housing bubble in most of the country right now, I would personally never buy in, even though San Antonio, I can hit 30% cash on cash, I would never buy there this year. In like West Palm Beach, I know how to hit 25% cash on cash, I would never buy there because my home is gonna probably go down in value. So you need to also think about not just where you can find a cash flowing Airbnb, which is hard enough, but where appreciation is a safer bet than other places. And my philosophy on that is it's really the Midwest. I would stay away from the Southeast. I would stay away from Texas. I would stay away from most of the West areas, even though I still do invest in Colorado. It's hard to do. I think like Chicago and the Midwest area is one of the least bubbly real estate markets we have in the country. Obviously, you'll consider your interest rates and your IRR as part of this. And next we'll talk about what I have like the most passion for this year is my current bend is what I call return on amenities. And before I go into this and show you all the numbers, some caveats to this, amenities by themselves will not guarantee you more money. And like an analogy that I thought of recently is like you might be a woodworker, you might have like a woodworking garage and you launch an Airbnb with a woodworking, someone's gonna love that. And like the percentage of people that will pay you extra for that woodworking shop is almost zero. So some amenities have no inherent value to your guests, and some have very high inherent value. But it's all hyper-focused on what guests you're trying to target with your Airbnb. So some of TechVestor's backyards that we've helped, the top left one and the bottom middle one, are two backyards that really, really work in short-term rentals, like resort-style backyards. I put a geodome in my property, the top middle one, and pools are typically amenities that always drive significant outsized returns. But the basic philosophy is that amenities, expenses are fixed and variable, but amenities really don't drive much cost. They really drive revenue without driving your expenses up much at all. So if you put in $20,000 to $40,000 into your amenities, you're likely to see a $20,000 to $40,000 increase if you market it correctly and if you target it at the right customers. without much increase in your expenses at all. And the return on investment is actually insane. And I like to quote it at somewhere between 70 to 200% return on the money that you put in the amenities. The biggest mistake I see Airbnb hosts make is not investing beyond the design and the furnishing of their home. They're not building stuff in the backyard. They're not creating experience. They're just slapping their hands and saying, I'm done, on to the next deal. And that's really not what you should do, especially in 2024. You're going to get a way higher dollar return on the amenities that you build than any new properties you go buy. But not all amenities are made alike. I like to say there's must-have amenities and then there's differentiator amenities. There are amenities that if you want to be in this group of people that are earning 20%, you have to check those boxes. In mountain houses that I talked about that I love so much, what you need to be competitive is a hot tub, a fire pit, and a game room. Not all amenities are made alike. Not all hot tubs or fire pits or game rooms are the same. There's cheap ones and there are expensive ones. The more luxury you go with an amenity, the more chance it has to earn a lot more revenue for you. But then there's amenities that people don't really have, amenities that help you stand out. This is really like the genesis behind STR Innovate is if you put innovative amenities in, it actually will work really, really well. So these are the amenities that help you stand out. They give you a competitive edge. I call it the X factor, or you're going to get an experiential premium. Where most people just have a commodity, you're creating an experience and you can charge more for that experience. So you're really just a peacock in your listing. There's 18 homes on the front page on every page of Airbnb, and you need to answer yourself, why would someone click yours over the other 18? How can you make your listing look as much like a peacock as possible? Which is what TechVestor does. They're colorful, they're just obnoxiously colorful and bright, and we're throwing all the amenities at your face first. So the most well-studied amenity in all of short-term rental is a hot tub. And you can find study after study after study on this. And a hot tub costs about $10,000 and leads to about $56 a night on average increase in your average daily rate, which comes out to about $10,000 a year. And assuming you spend about $3,000 in hot tub supplies and additional staff, that could be a 70% ROI in your property. The other classic in the mountain house, a game room. This is actually a game room in Bloomington, Illinois, in the most basic, boring, small house I've ever seen. And this house has no business making more than $40,000. I think it does about $125, $150, and it's like the kid's birthday party target. And they sell it for $500 plus bucks a night. They probably have a $40,000 game room. I think it adds $100,000 to their revenue. It's hard to be exact, but you will probably earn about 100% return from your game room. A fire pit, this is one of TechVestor's hero photos in the Poconos, one of my favorite bright fire pits. It cost me about $5,000 to recreate this fire pit, and I think it's going to add $5,000 to my daily rate, but you're going to have to call me in 12 months so I can confirm that for you. I find pergola hammocks, if you have a pool especially, the more outside chill areas that you can put into an Airbnb, the more people will pay for you. So the more luxury pergolas, I found this one in a Joshua Tree Airbnb. The more you can put like this, the more money you will make. I spent about $2,700 trying to recreate that picture and this fire pit, and this is what it looks like. It finished on Monday. It took me about 30 days to order all the parts and have my handy guy build it all. But photos like this and amenities like this will allow you to drive significant outsized revenue. At least that's my philosophy and how I invest. I've also put a geodome ADU in the back of this cabin, has a geodome in the back of it, and it cost me $75,000, which I financed on the construction note with 20% down. And that geodome, I know how much it makes me because somebody copied this cabin and put a hot tub next to it near the same national park. They just stole my idea 9 months later, and they make $50,000 less than me. So they don't have a geodome. That, I can quantify pretty precisely how much this adds to my revenue, which is a 60% return on investment. Good luck getting that on your next Airbnb. I actually do have some hard data as well. I'm probably one of the only hosts in America that rents equipment and doesn't just give it away at my Airbnb. I'm near a national park called the Great Sand Dune National Park where people like to sandboard, and they rent these sandboards from businesses nearby. And I was like, why don't I just start renting them from a shed with a QR code? So actually 12 months ago, I started doing that, and I rent them at $25 a board a day. It cost me $2,500. to put the shed and the 7 nice boards in, and it's made me $2,500 in the last 12 months. I can actually know exactly the monthly revenue is about $250, $300. So there is some hard data to suggest that the 100% or close to it does exist. The cheat code today to make your Airbnb earn a bunch more is a pickleball court, basketball court. That's what TechVestor is doing. One of these will probably cost you about $30,000, and you'll get anywhere from a $15,000 to a $100,000 increase depending on how well you market it, how well this is a desired amenity in your market, things like that. This is a crazy, crazy high return. And from looking at other properties, these are 2 of the top most profitable properties in San Antonio, one with a pool and one without a pool. It's very clear that marketing an Airbnb is all about the amenities. Like, you barely see the inside of these homes at all on their first 5 photos. You see the pool, the pickleball court, the basketball court, the hot tub, the fire pit, the game room. These are properties that earn 25 to 30% gross yield. And it's very clear why they do it, because they maximize their space in their backyard to fit as much as you possibly can. And you might be asking, like, is there a diminishing return? Is there a point where you should stop putting amenities in, where it'll stop making sense? And I haven't found it, honestly. This is one of my favorite properties in Texas. It's in Dripping Springs. It's a $2 million home that has every possible amenity they could fit in about 3 acres. Tennis, basketball, fire pit, pergola with seating, pool with the hot tub, a putting green, and a 9-hole mini golf course, the kids' playscape, the bocce, the cornhole, the volleyball, and a soccer field in the bottom left. They earned $576,000 revenue for a 28% gross yield on their $2 million home. That's one of the only homes over $1.5 million that makes enough money to make sense, and it's obvious how they make their money. They charge about $1,800 a night, and they have 80% occupancy. So after you review all your buy box notes, you should be able to figure out what amenities are must-have versus which ones will give you a competitive edge. And hopefully you could use this data to help indicate to yourself which amenities should I add to my house. And you should really be asking yourself, though, what can you add as an X factor? What can you do that's different, that's not just the same as what everybody else is doing out there? But my strategy is just to take things that work. There are some markets that are hyper-competitive. I call Joshua Tree the cradle of innovation. I would never invest there right now, but I love taking what works there and bringing it to any other market in the US that doesn't have competitive markets. So take the amenities that you're seeing that people are doing in the competitive markets and bring them to non-competitive markets like southern Wisconsin, which the homes are just terrible. They're really bad. So yeah, this is the presentation. These are the 6 steps to get it right from the start. And I'll be happy to take any questions that you guys might have. You can find my socials. You can find STR Search's website. You can find me after. I'd love to chat with all you guys if I haven't. Jeff, what's up? Yeah, it's really hard. When you have a condo and an apartment, there's only so much you can do. Everyone has a box. You can only do stuff inside the box, not outside the box. So it's hard. What I've seen work, like elements of a game room, you could put like the shuffleboard table in. The more accent walls that you could put, a Chicago-themed mural wall you can put on this. That's going to help increase marketability and cost. And theming your apartment for a specific target customer. I know there is one Airbnb investor I met at a meetup, and she has a bachelorette-themed Airbnb apartment, and she sells it at a higher price than I've ever seen. And she's the only bachelorette-themed Airbnb I have seen in Chicago. So hyper-theming, hyper-targeting one customer demographic with your apartment, whether it's bachelor, bachelorette, families with young kids or families with older kids or couples or professionals. If you target that customer hyper well, they'll give you more money for it. But if you target all of those people at one time with your condo, you'll just be very generically priced. But if you have a backyard, I know Conrad has a backyard that he's not utilizing in his Airbnb. He has a 2-unit with a backyard, and none of them are getting access to the backyard. And I'm like, you can put a sweet hangout deck pergola area with a grill, outdoor seating, an outdoor heater. Think about like the patios that you go to in Chicago. Recreate that in a backyard for people, and they'll pay you extra for it. but it's tough. Any other questions? Yeah. I mean, this is all the data that I have, all the research I've shown, 70%, 100%. A fire pit might be like 200%. A pool is a pretty big one that I don't have on this list, which is harder because it's sometimes necessary, sometimes not necessary. But I think you're pretty much going to get about 100% from anything, but it really depends on who you're targeting. And the person you're targeting needs to get value, like the woodworking shop example, right? You need to find amenity that adds value to your target clientele. Like families with kids are TechFesters' target market. Those houses with, like, in the top left and the bottom middle, they hyper target family with kids, and their philosophy is that, like, I bet I could buy a less than $1 million home and I could steal customers from a $2 million home by adding way more amenities to them. So it's kind of an additive effect. It's hard to isolate any one amenity, but if you put this whole package of things that a target customer will want, you could earn about 2x the revenue of an average house. Yep. Onboarding process. Yeah, so I work for STR Search. As I mentioned, we have 3 different products. We have like I'll forecast it for you, I'll optimize your Airbnb product for you, and we have a product, STR Search. So when we're helping clients, this is the DIY version of the presentation. This is how I do it and how you could do it without hiring us. When we hire people, when people hire us to do it, we go through a process of understanding their investment goals, what type of market is best for them, what their budget is, what their goals of investing is, and then we go through the buy boxes that we have curated already, and we serve up a house that meets their needs, and then help walk them through the process of closing on the house. And we also connect them with the contractor who's called STR Cribs that does all the backyard and interior renovations. So we very much serve up the house to buy, the set of amenities to buy, the customer to target, and then the contractor to help you execute it. No, I've never worked with a wholesaler. Well, Jeff has sent me some deals, some short-term rental stuff before. Yeah. I think it could work, especially if I had delivered a buy box to the wholesaler and be like, this is what I buy in that market, in these locations. It could definitely work. Conrad. They do. I think it's under, you have to go to other filters, other columns, and you have to check it. There's a space I could show you after I brought my computer if you want to see. But Price Labs definitely should deliver you the annual revenue total. Yeah, the slide deck should be available through somewhere. And that's a really good question. That's something I did with the Geodome property. They were very average homes. No one made more than $70,000. I was like, well, I bet if I build a Joshua Tree home with a Geodome and a hot tub, no one has a hot tub, I bet I could earn, I kind of fingered in the air. I was like 30% more than anyone around me. I had some data to suggest that super unique properties earn about 3 times the average property. So 4 bedrooms in my mountain town earn about $30,000. And I was like, if I do it really well, I bet I could hit 100,000. So it was both using that 3x the average, and I did about 30% above my top competitor I wanted to beat. Those were the quick math that I used to determine it. And then I run it for a year, figure out what works, how to price it, and then ended up even leveling it up even further. So it's really hard. That's the most advanced thing. The The hard part is knowing if there is enough luxury demand in that market that will pay you the higher price. But often, if there are no homes that are nice enough tier, there's no one paying that much money because it's kind of chicken and the egg problem to a certain extent. So you really just need to be in an area where you know there are high income earner people coming, which is, I like national parks because high income people go there. So I know they are coming even though they're not paying that high amount. Maybe we have time for one more question if someone wants to chop in. All right, well, what? Sure. It's not really a factor like labor cost of cleaners. Like in Chicago, you can probably find them at 17 bucks an hour. In mountain towns, I pay 30 bucks an hour. It works at both of those price ranges for me. Essentially, when you pass it through to your guests, mostly. All right, thank you guys all, and come chat with me after if you want to talk about more return on amenities.
Okay, everyone, we're gonna try the next one. We're a few minutes late, so that's not bad. So I did leave a little leeway time for Q&A, so we're still on schedule like everything else. I wanted to go over tech. So like I said, I'm a big technology person. Anyone here from Airbnb, anyone here that knows me from the tech side. And anyone that talks about me and says I'm the Airbnb tech guy, which is insane. But yeah, you go to any conference, they was like, oh yeah, Dytron, the Airbnb tech person. So that you'll probably hear that from more from me. But this is my big spill. Because a lot of Airbnbs, they just have it on Airbnb directly. They send directly, message people through Airbnb directly. And it works for the first one, but when you get that 2 a.m. phone call, when you get that issue that pops up that a door code wasn't added, and that person now gives you a 1 star, it changes everything. Or the cleaner didn't know that they were supposed to come in and clean at a certain time, and the guest gets there and they say the place hasn't been turned yet. Those are big problems, and you can definitely have small things you can put in your business that are not super costly, that you are worth this weight in gold. It's just something you should always have with your program. So I want to go over like a small summary. I did not make a whole lot of slides. I'll be talking most of the time because I know small print on the screen, no one really wants to read that. So I will definitely be talking most of the time. But I go over property management software, PMSs, which basically is your program that houses your information for your short-term rentals. So it directly connects with Hospitable, Vrbo, Booking.com, and stuff like that. So you're not going to the other platforms and stuff, and sending messages directly from those platforms. So you have like an all-in-one system. So that makes it definitely easier. Dynamic pricing, everyone knows price slabs for the most part, but no one uses price slabs correctly. I can tell you that now. Even now, I barely use price slabs correctly, to the point where we get a revenue manager that deals with this type of stuff because I am terrible at it. Cleaning automation is a big thing because, like you said, you don't want to have a situation where a guest comes in and the place is not clean. Monitoring devices, there's a lot of stipulations recently about monitoring devices, but regardless of the fact, every person should have a monitoring device in their home to be a hospitable host, to use some other people's terms, because your neighbors will start to hate you if they have a party every weekend. We've had issues recently, and I'm pretty sure my next door neighbor is uncomfortable with us directly. So it's like you have to make sure that these scenarios definitely don't happen, so you don't get nuisance regulations. And in Chicago, nuisance is a problem. The police come to your place a few too many times, they will shut you down, and you will be served pretty quickly. So definitely making sure you do things like that. And smart devices, and then other tools in ChatGPT. ChatGPT is in your world, and it will be in our world forever. And it's changing everything at this point. It's making things a lot easier to manage and making sure that you are always sounding professional, even though you're grumpy at the time, because sometimes you're not in a happy mood with a guest, what they're saying, but ChatGPT will be able to help you down the line. It's like, okay, I need to change those words a little bit. Now, I would never say that, but it says that. So property management software, like I said, it just handles every product that you have, all Airbnbs you have on every different platform. So some of the biggest ones are Hospitable, which is the cheapest route to go in. So they're not promoting them. I'm not getting anything from them, but Hospitable is definitely like the starting point, and you can definitely progress over time. But Guesty, Logify, and Hostly are some of like the biggest platforms that you can get for your property management software. And they're basically meant to just connect to everything all into one. So when someone books on Airbnb, it blocks your calendar on Vrbo, and it blocks it off on Booking.com. And it also manages your reviews on all the platforms, so it can review your guests, so you're not sending out reviews. It can send them automated messages when they're booking and things like that. And it also are doing your door codes, so you're not doing door codes anymore, so it's completely taking over the management of door codes, which I don't know how many people here have physical keys. You should never have a physical key for your Airbnb other than inside of a lockbox that is meant to be last-ditch efforts so they don't break your window. And that has happened for some people. They will break the window to get inside their home because they can't get in any other way. But you should always have a smart lock, and you should never have a physical key at your properties. But like I said, property management softwares will change your life when it comes to when a guest books. We have about 8 messages that goes to each single guest. So whenever a guest books our place, it tells you, thank you for the reservation. This is how many people are staying. This is how long you're staying. And it gives them a link to our guidebook and tell them inside of our guidebook, there is, you want early check-in, you can pay for early check-in through the guidebook directly. I'll talk about that later on, but you can pay for your guidebook here. You don't have to go anywhere else. You don't have to ask me again, can I do early check-in? So you already know on the first message that if you want early check-in, you can get it through the app, and you're already going to pay for it. So generally, that stops a lot of people from asking me for free check-in or early check-in. Like, I think we got a guest yesterday asked us for 8 a.m. check-in. I'm like, a guest is still in the place at that time, and I know I can't do that. The day before is open, but it's saying like, hey, we can't do that. You either want to book the day prior and you can come in at 8 a.m., or you don't want to come in that early. It's like we wouldn't even allow them to pay for that, because our early check-in is like $100 on our smaller properties, and it grows up depending on how big the property is. But even at $100 for an 8 a.m. check-in on a $500 a night Airbnb, I mean, we're losing money by letting someone come in so early. So it starts to alleviate some of those problems, and it starts to send a series of messages that the guest sees. Like I said, it sends the first message out, and you will basically be told, like, here's your stay, here's what you do. If you want to stay an extra day, like, the PMS knows that it looks at your calendar and says, oh, it's a day before open or a day after open. So based upon the availability, it will send them a message like, hey, if you want to come early, you can say 20% on the extra day. You can book direct, and it checks the calendar to make sure that night is open, and it will send that little snippet of information to the guest and say, if you want to check in early, you can check in early. And it also looks at the end date. If it's the day after checkout is available, it also sends a message that said, I'll give you an extra day with a 20% discount. And you'll be surprised at the amount of people that will want to extend their stay, and they will pay you directly. So they're already staying at your property. You're able to extend their stay, and you're able to take it in without the 17% in taxes that Airbnb puts directly out there. So you save yourself a lot of headaches. Like, we literally had a booking that a person, she booked, saw that we did direct booking, she canceled the booking, and then booked with us directly, and we earned like an extra $500 just from the booking that cost the same price to her, but we were able to get a lot more money back because we skipped past Airbnb's regulations. So these things happen automatically. You don't have to really think about them. Those things are just happening in the background. Anytime someone books, 5 minutes later, they get a notification that a welcome message. And then going down the line, for the 2 days before check-in, it tells them this is the address and these are the things that you got going on. And then the day of check-in, the program will put on the door your door lock number, and it will basically tell the guests, like, hey, your check-in is at this time. If you want to check in early, it is upon availability, let us know, but you still need to pay for it. And still direct them to our guidebook. The guidebooks are something that will change your life, because guests will ask questions. Airbnb doesn't show a lot of information when the guest books. You'd be surprised. You have all those slots that you fill out, and then when someone books, they don't see any of that information. It is sitting on the back end that Airbnb sees, but they don't see it as a guest. And if you do find it, it's so buried, it's not easy to come about. So very much so, you have a guidebook that will give them that information, and it's in the forefront of how to get there, how to get to the place, how to leave, what is it, checkout instructions, because the amount of times, while sitting here, I got a phone call from a guest from our Texas property. She's like, I can't figure out how to do the door lock. And I'm like, why are you calling me? Like, first thing, how did you get my phone number? And it's like, how are you calling me, and why did you not know how to do this? Like, and then it said the question, like, we have a guidebook. It shows you what to do, what the number is, so you should have looked there. So it's like, it's always something that the guest needs that they somehow don't see. So it's put it out there as blatantly as possible that they can see it, so you don't have to do it yourself. So we can go forward to dynamic pricing. Dynamic pricing is the elephant in the room when it comes to people thinking that they're smarter than systems most of the time. They say that Price Labs is not a cheap item. Per property, it costs you about $17 to $20 per unit. So that's not a cheap item. But at the same time, it knows when the Taylor Swift pops up, and it changes your prices drastically. In the wintertime, one of our properties in Lincoln Park shoots from $150 a night to $700 to $900 a night, based upon availability. We get to the point that it's like, this does not make any sense. No one would want to book it at that price, but someone booked the Chicago Marathon for 4 nights for over $4,000 in a 3-bedroom apartment in Chicago, which is insane. Like, it cash flowed from that one booking that I still have 25 days available on my calendar. And I would have never changed that myself. I would have never thought about it myself. It was just me being aggressive with my pricing model, and it shot it up, and I just kind of let it go. And it's like, okay, it believes it can get that price, and it will command that. And the further you start getting bookings out, you're realizing that you're getting people that are booking 6 months in advance, and they're in a scenario that's like they find it as a deal, or they want to get there before anyone else gets there. So you don't always want to be the deal that someone books 7 months out. You want to be the person that, like, I need a place, your place is nice, I'm booking it now because I know it will be gone in the next few weeks because it's the Chicago Marathon. There's not that many Airbnbs in Chicago. To be honest, there's only 4,000 Airbnbs in the whole city of Chicago. And obviously it's millions of people that live here. So the fact is that everyone says there's a lot of Airbnbs here, it's not. So for the people that do have Airbnbs here, like, you're in a small list of people. And to be honest, if you're inside of this room and you're talking about stuff like this, majority of people don't even have this type of software. So you can put yourself in a situation that you're making way more money than anyone else is, because majority of people don't have dynamic prices. They don't have anything like that. They mostly don't have smart locks at all. And they wake up and they greet their guests. Greeting your guests is a good thing if you have the ability to do so, because it gives a personal touch, but they're greeting them to trade keys because they don't have any easier way to give them keys type scenario. But with dynamic pricing and how it is in the Midwest, since we're all Midwest people, it goes well. Short-term rentals go well until you hit around November of the year. And once you hit November, it shuts down. And you have to come to a decision. Do I run as a short-term rental during the winter season, or do I turn it into a midterm rental? In price labs and things like in beyond pricing, you can set it to, it's a short-term rental during a certain amount of months, but as soon as it hits October, November, December, and January, it will basically shift it to a midterm rental without you doing anything. It knows that you have your schedule, and it will basically, anytime that time frame shows available, it'll put a 30-day minimum on those nights. So you get a midterm stay instead of a short-term stay. So you can make sure that you're getting the numbers that you need during the winter time. So you're not struggling to make the short-term rental work, because in all honesty, our lowest performing Chicago property probably had five nights booked in January of this year. And it's like, this is terrible. And if you don't do something like this, you're putting yourself in a situation where you're pretty screwed, because you're not going to perform. Like any numbers that you put on paper from a $100,000 a year property still makes barely anything, scraping the bottom when it comes to the time of January, because there's really no one here. So you're able to set these things up. You're able to set your days and your availability. So one of the bigger things that people don't do when they create price labs, they just set it and forget it. They don't set their minimum stays, and there's minimum stays that shift. So imagine you have someone that checked out on Monday and someone else is checking in on Thursday. And you would imagine that you would want someone to stay that full gap. So the software will basically change the minimum stay between that gap to fit the whole gap. Instead of getting a 2-day booking in that time frame, you want to get the full gamut of getting a longer booking. So in these scenarios, when you set it up correctly, it will then shift the minimum stay during that particular time to the 4 days, the 3 days that covers that whole time frame. Most people don't set it up correctly, and most people just put the 2-day minimums that are required by the city, and then you have situations, you have orphan days, and we've gotten, in the past, numerous Saturday orphan days. It's like, that's a $400 a night day that just went orphan, and I can't do anything with it. So if you would have had the minimum stay requirements placed in there at the time, you would have been able to sell Saturday, and no one would have been able to undercut you that $400. So that's one of the bigger things that people, even that they have the pricing software, don't utilize. And just one of the bigger things they can do, like when you set it and forget it, you don't create a comp set for your properties. Like when it comes in, it says like, these are the 3-2 in your unit. You have a 3-2, these are other 3-2s in your area. And it just uses that as data. And you need to go into the system and say that it is a 3-2, but 10 of those comps that you put against me are low level and I'm mid or high tier. And you need to remove those from your comp set, so you're not dropping your prices to their numbers because you're better than they are, honestly. So that is one of the bigger things that people need to go into and look at. You need to look at your competition, put them in as your comps and your direct competition, so you make sure that when your prices change, you're lockstep with them and not lockstep with someone that is on the lower end of the spectrum. So Price labs will definitely change how it works. I will say when we started, we instantly went to price labs. There was never a time when we didn't use it. But I have talked to the people that switched over, and they're seeing a 20% bump in increase a month in revenue just from just changing prices on a daily basis. And when it comes to this, it changes on every single day. It changes your prices, shifting it based upon what it needs to be and what it feels that the demand is giving out there. So with, like you said, we said Taylor Swift concert, and it's like when those those tickets come out, people go instantly to go buy, you rent a place out. And if you don't do it in the time right, they will catch you before your price changes and before you recognize you need to change your price, and you will basically lose out. You will be the deal instead of the person trying to get something very quickly, knowing that everything is a book out. They saw a deal, they booked it right away. I've accidentally done it. Something happened with my model that the 30-day for December didn't work out. It still was 2 days, and I basically dropped my pricing for December to be able to get a set price per month that will cash flow the property at its base. For Verbo, for some reason, didn't put my 30-day minimum, so someone saw a deal. So they had two-day minimums in New Year's Eve, and they booked a 3-bedroom apartment for about $400, $500. So it's like, they saw the deal, they jumped on it, and now I'm stuck with a situation where this should be a $3,000, $4,000 book, and they got it for $400. So sometimes things mess up and you don't catch it, and then someone else takes advantage of the fact that you didn't catch it. So making sure that those things are taken out, those equations of you messing up or taking out, is something that Price Labs will help you do. So like I said, when you first started, if you don't have it, set it and forget it, and is a thing that most of will do, and that's okay. It's not really a problem, but you have to, over time, go back into the program and start to look at some of the settings to get to the point of, I am able to create like more settings beyond the basic stuff, and I'm able to push and pump more money out of my Airbnb, because that is the biggest issue, because most people are at the conference that we're talking about is definitely like, how do I pump more money out of an Airbnb that I have, because the numbers have dropped off in comparison to COVID years. When COVID happened, everybody was able to do their Airbnb without anything. You had an Airbnb on the market, you made $60,000 a year just for having it. Those times a little bit over, so you have to be a little bit more strategic when it comes to your numbers and things of that nature. So I'll go into cleaning. This is a big one. Cleaning in itself takes way too much time. Like I said, we were trying to sell early check-in. We were trying to sell late checkout, but we still have to have our cleaner come in and able to clean the place thoroughly. And being able to sell someone an early check-in and late checkout, you have to somehow tell that information to your cleaner. And if you're sending them text messages saying that a guest 5 months from now, 3 months from now is going to check in early or check out late, she's not going to know that, I promise. And you're going to end up in a situation, she's going to forget, and someone's going to walk into your house at early check-in at 1 o'clock, and it's like she hasn't turned anything. So having an automation when it comes to this type of stuff is big. So most people have a struggle with finding cleaners in general. Turno is one of like the nitty-gritty ways of getting something. They help you find a cleaner, and they help you schedule the cleaner. And anytime you update your update your check-in times in your PMS, it shifts it to Turno and let them know. If you are a little bit smarter and you start to do more internal things, Breezeway is one of those programs where it does the exact same thing, but it doesn't help you find a cleaner, but it will help you manage your cleaners. You can upload their photos to make sure the place is clean the way it's supposed to be clean. They will also make sure that they know that the shifting of times, and they get notifications for tasks that need to be changed, and they get like a day-to-day reminder of like, this is your cleans for the day that we will assign for you. So these are the things that you definitely need to have, because without this stuff, your cleaner will not know. And if you're in a scenario where you have multiple cleaners and you assign the wrong cleaner to the wrong place and they're going to the wrong thing at the wrong time, it creates a debacle. And then also there's a lot of people in this room and in the world that are doing their own Airbnb cleaning. That is definitely not what you should be doing. You should be getting some outsourcing stuff. So going to Turno, paying someone $75, $80 for a turn is way better than you doing it yourself, because it gets very expensive and it's very hard to scale when you're doing a 2-hour cleaning yourself. See how much time. Noise monitoring. Noise monitoring has been one of those things. Airbnb last month put out that noise monitors have to be told to the guests that there's a noise monitor inside of their homes. And a lot of guests, a lot of hosts are like pulling and removing their noise monitors because of this message. It's something that you need to have, because if someone has a party inside of your property, they will destroy your whole business right away. For Chicago, if the police come to your house 3 times, you get 3 nuisance violations, you will be shut down. Your license will be removed, and you will not be able to do anything anymore. So having noise monitoring helped you to be able to make sure that your guests are not partying in your house, and if they're not partying, they are at least being respectful of the noise. Because if you have a house that fits 10 people, that's not a party per se, but it's still 10 people in your house that is a bachelorette party. They're still enjoying themselves, and the noise level inside of your property is still louder than it should be. So if you don't have very insulated walls, which most of us don't, it will protrude to your next house, and all of a sudden you have problems with a guest, with your next door neighbor calling you out. And houses are basically touching each other here, so you really have a problem with that. So, like I said, most of the people are taking theirs out. They're actually not saying that you need to remove them. You need to tell them that you have it. And you also don't need to tell them where it is. So most people are saying that you need to tell them exactly where in the house your noise monitor is. That's not the case. You can tell them that you have one, but you don't need to display where it is within your home. Because you have a tendency that a guest will remove it or move it somewhere that is not close to them, so it won't be triggered if they know that's directly what it is. And most of these, so the noise monitor and the smoke monitor is now becoming a package deal now in one device. They can do both. Over the weekend, we had a guest smoke in the house. She told me that it was a weird smell. It's like, what is the weird smell? And it's like, she keeps saying there's a weird smell. My smoke monitor is going off the whole night. And then I told her, like, hey, the smoke monitor is going off. I want to make sure that you tell him he's not smoking. Smoking is not allowed. And she's like, oh, I didn't know you had smoke monitors. I didn't hear any noise from like a smoke alarm going off. And it's like, that's not the same thing. A fire alarm and a smoke monitor are not the same. I didn't say that to her, but she thought that was the case. After she checked out, about 30 minutes after checkout, I decided, because I was close, I walked inside. Because it was either a smell in the house that's a problem, it could be gas or some other issue, or it was her creating the gas, creating the smoke that was making our monitors go off. Soon as I walked inside, you could smell the weed. It was instant. And it's like, okay, so you created a noise. You created the smoke smell here. And it was actually not, my monitor was actually doing what it was supposed to be doing. It wasn't anything wrong. But when I turned around and I looked for the actual smoke detector. She removed it from the wall, and it's completely gone. I still, to today, don't know where the smoke detector is. She thought that was the thing that was telling on her, and it was not. It was another device that was on the wall that she didn't know where it was. So right now, I'm pretty sure she threw our smoke detector in the trash because she thought that she was going to get away with smoking in the house because that was gone. So we're at a situation now that we now need to get new smoke monitors in the house, fire detectors, because she's stolen it, basically. And she did, and then told Airbnb on us, saying that the place smelled, so I want my money back. So she then put a claim against us, saying the place smelled. So she's playing that game, but she doesn't know that we have documentation, and this is the big thing. There's smoke monitors, the smoke detection gives you a chart, and that chart is your evidence to Airbnb. If someone smokes inside your property, and you go get to Airbnb and say they smoked in your property, they say, where's the evidence? And it's like, a smell is the evidence. And they're like, that doesn't work. You need to have some hard structure. You have to have, if they're not cigarette butts on the floor, that's not smoking. But when it comes to the documentation they give you with the chart of the actual increase in smell in the house, that is the documentation that Airbnb would accept. So if anyone here has those issues, and the colder it gets here, the people want to smoke inside of your home, you will have situations where Airbnb will kick back if you don't have a monitor that has the actual graph that says that this is the incline at this time and this is the decrease at this time. And one of the other things is doorbell cameras. This is something you have to say where it is, so you have to display where it is, and now based upon Airbnb rules, it has to be outside. I do know some people that do rent by the room. They have indoor cameras for the protection of the guests, per se. But this is something that now has to be removed from the platform. So if anyone has any indoor cameras, they have to be removed, or the guests will be able to remove your listing from the platform and get you banned right away. And that goes into effect tomorrow. So as of tomorrow, Airbnb will start banning Airbnbs that have any cameras inside of your home. So just keep that in mind. But doorbell cameras, any cameras outside, those are something that needed, and you definitely need a doorbell camera. If you don't have the wires for a doorbell, somehow figure it out. Because if you don't have a doorbell camera, you don't have an ability to see who's truly walking into your house. And then when that party happens, and you realize that 25 people walked in your house, and you didn't know anything about it, that's a bit of a problem. And you don't have evidence to show Airbnb there's a party happening also. So you can show the evidence of the people being above the required limit going inside of your property, and you can shut it down. And you can start giving your series of messages through Airbnb saying that there's a party happening. I'm giving you your first warning, second warning, third warning. And this is the iffy part. Everyone has noise monitors, but they don't have the action of if your guest is having a party, they're ignoring you, and then what? What happens next? You should, if you have a big enough portfolio, you should have a retainer here. If we're in Chicago, you have to pay someone, a company or retainer to have on the books, and every time there's an occurrence, they'll charge you to come out, but they also charge you on a monthly basis to be on their books, which is annoying, but the one time you have that party and that one time something gets shut down, it's one of those things you wish you had instead of losing thousands of dollars instead of paying $1,200 just because you had to pay a $100 retainer every month. And mind you, if your guest does happen and someone had to remove them from the property, I will put it on anyone to put the retainer fee and the guest removal fee all into one and get, for that month at least, you are then charging that to the guest because you were forced to use your actual services at that time. So at least if it actually happened, you can try to push off some of that fee, some of those fees as a pass-through to them. But definitely, this is something that for 2 years that we had monitors. Most people would stop, but then there was every once in a while someone wouldn't. And now it's like, what do we do now? I'm not going to go to the house. We've all heard the stories where Airbnb had a party broken up and there was guns in Chicago. Like no one wants to walk into as an Airbnb owner or anyone on your staff to walk into the house as someone on your team, and then there's weapons in the property. So you need someone trained in knowing exactly what to do to make sure that you're not in a situation that puts yourself in danger or someone on your team in danger. So monitoring devices are definitely something that is needed and you should have. Go ahead. So you can find some companies that are like bouncers. So like when you go to the club, the company that they're outsourcing the bouncers, you can truly get those people to come to your house also. And they will basically pack up their stuff and boot them out. And Airbnb will allow it. Once that you're against the Airbnb's rules also, so you're not getting in trouble. You're also not giving them a refund, mind you. Once you kick them out of the property, that you are doing the things you're supposed to do with Airbnb, and Airbnb doesn't want the party either. So they don't want a situation where they get in trouble with the city of Chicago, and they also have to deal with the fact that the guest is tarnishing the brand. So that's why it's a big thing. So definitely, yeah, you can go out and find them. There's like 4 or 5 that are easily found for the city of Chicago. I won't give any names at least, but you can definitely find them if you find like security services. I saw you. You can call the cops, but then you have the risk of getting that nuisance violation. So that is when you start to run into if cops will want to kick them out and not get you in trouble, that could be possible. But at the same time, you could get written up for allowing a party in your house. So you do that a few times, it does get you in trouble. And you want to bring the least amount of attention to your unit as you possibly can. I saw another hand.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love the my cousin Penny.
Yeah, basically. You definitely need someone. There's a woman that came to our meetup. Her husband is a cop, so all she does is she does call the cops, but she calls her husband every time. And the husband comes out and just walks into the house. She gives him a code to the door. She walks in the house. It's still his home, so he walks inside and busts up the party, and he kicks everyone out. So I mean, you definitely need someone to make it work, but you definitely should be using the outside service. Do not try to break it up yourself. Go ahead. As that you will be removed if you party? Yes. In your rules, you should have your standard rules on Airbnb, and you should have your rules when the guest checks in. Like we'll go back to some of the automated messages. At the time of check-in, I send every guest our rules. I definitely should tell you should not have a laundry list of rules because they will not read it, but they at least need to know what your rules are. And most of the time, if you give them 5 paragraphs of rules, they will definitely not read it. But make sure it's like concise, maybe 10 or less. And yes, smoking inside results in a $500 fee, and parties are not allowed. If not dispersed, when told, you will be removed from the property type scenario. Go ahead. Yeah. Someone will be uncomfortable with the scenario. So yeah, you would need to reposition the cameras that they do not directly point at something that's sensitive. Well, that's another caveat there. So the rule says sensitive areas also. So if you have your jacuzzi, outdoor shower, places like that, if you have any camera that can still see that area, you can also get hit for that one also. So it's not just indoor, it's secret, like areas that are sensitive. Go ahead. Something where people will be changing clothes, let's say. If you have a pool area, that's one thing. But if you have like changing areas within the area that they have a camera close to it, you wouldn't want to have it there. Say the last part again?
Like if they didn't book directly with you, it may be pre-authorized and deposit. How do you get that through Airbnb if that's one of the rules?
So if Airbnb does say that the guest is actually doing a fault and they will uphold your rules that you have, again, Airbnb is Airbnb, you can charge for that fee for that smoking. But like with that being said, Airbnb's customer service is all over the place. You can have one person that says yes without question. You have another person that says no. You have to go back a second time to get that second yes. So most of the time you run into situations where the guest will say, the Airbnb will say no the first time. You put another claim in, and the second time when you do it, a person will then say yes, because it's like there's no SOP documents for them that they review, like they should be at least, saying that based upon this criteria and you have these rules, and these rules were placed upon them in the system and that was there before they booked, they should be able to enforce those. But like I said, Airbnb, it does not do what you expect it to.
And they can charge the guests, but you have to do it probably within a certain time frame, right?
Yeah, so you do have a couple of weeks, so you definitely are not in a scenario that it has to be done right away, but the longer you have it going out and without a claim, it doesn't make it look good. But yeah, Airbnb will first try to charge the guests and ask the guest to pay directly, and if the guest doesn't pay, that's when air cover comes in, and air cover itself has a tendency to be, they don't want to pay. So they want the guest to pay. The guest is willing to pay, that's great. But if they don't want to pay, they pay, and then they get a little bit annoyed. And then to be honest, Airbnb have penalized people that utilize air cover too much, which is BS. But if you are in a situation where you're utilizing their air cover constantly, they still will start pinging you, saying that you're using their insurance too much, which is not how that should work. Yes, well, any booking platform you have, so like even if you have a direct booking, if you go through Hospitable has insurance also through their direct booking website. So there's programs like AutoHost. Hospitable, just because I use Hospitable, they use AutoHost as their insurance issuer. So you can file a claim with AutoHost against the guest, and you'll be able to get paid through that one. But if you have it through Vrbo, they have their own insurance policy. Booking.com, different breed. Booking.com only takes, you can take a deposit from them and you'll be able to pull from that deposit. Booking.com does not pay out for damages. Even though they say they have a damage program, I've tried to use it multiple times and they basically said, wipe your hands, like, we're done here.
So if you have a website, direct booking website that's outside of any of those platforms, then it'll be difficult.
So then if you have that scenario, it will fall back on your true insurance. So like if you have a Airbnb insurance rider on your insurance, it will cover damages to the property from an Airbnb side of the house or stuff like lost wages and stuff like that. So you're definitely able to go that route. That one hurts you the most because it will change the more claims you do that, it will change your policy for your yearly policy, so it hurts you more.
So it's best to have a direct booking through one of those platforms.
Yeah, and you charge, like hospitable, 'cause I keep using them. They charge 6% of the booking. So like I said, Airbnb charges 17, they charge 6, but that 6% that's being charged, that is for them paying for the insurance policy and stuff like that on your behalf. So when it comes to direct bookings, it is most definitely better to have it on platform or on a direct booking site that has an insurance policy on the back end. Okay. So yes, to go to smart devices, thermostats itself. Everyone should have a smart thermostat. It should be Wi-Fi. I used to have Nest. I definitely will tell people to stray away from them kind of for the most part because they are not that great, and the newest models are confusing, so people don't know how to use them. If you do want to use Nest, there is one model that allows you to lock it. So it gives you a range, and it will tell it as low as you want to go or the highest you want to go. And that one particular model is the only one that's able to do it. And from there, you're able to lock it. But yes, a large amount of the newer ones, they don't lock them anymore. To be honest, the newer Nest used to have it, but they removed it as a setting for whatever reason. I would assume that some guests were doing negative things, and they were basically making it so that the cap was still below the requirements for the city. So like in the wintertime, the heating has to be above 65. Just imagine if you locked it at 65 or 64 and the guests can't go any higher than that. So that might be one of the reasons why they removed it, but there is still one version of the Nest thermostats that will, but it is a bit of a struggle to deal with that. But there are the thermostats that are out there, you can digitally manage them a little bit better, including with some of these programs that they have out there. You can basically, it has your calendar integrated into it, and basically when a guest gets there, it puts it at a certain range at that point, and when they check out, it changes the range to be a little bit better. That is not meant for a person to be living there, but it's making sure your pipes are not bursting and the place is not going too hot. So those programs and those stuff become a lot techier. I promise it's not that easy to go into, but you're basically setting parameters for when a guest is there and parameters when a guest is not there. And when a guest is there, it sets it to 75, 74 at a low of 68. And when they leave, it drops it to 65 or 75, depending on if it's hot or cold at the time. Those are most definitely needed to be done, and it creates a large amount of like ecosystem when it comes to your systems. You definitely can talk about those things because like a humidity sensor is one of another interesting items. It's like we have a property in Mexico. It has a large amount of humidity issues. If you turn off your air conditioning, you will have mold on your walls, and it will be a whole issue that you have to deal with. So your air conditioning needs to be on at all times, and it could be a week and a half break between bookings. So it needs to be able to trigger it once it goes over 46% in humidity. It kicks on to pull out some of the water in the air, so you're not getting moldy. Because that's a big issue, because you can run into a lot of problems with mold inside of your properties. Smart lock is the biggest one. Choosing your smart lock is very important. Everyone just says smart locks and they just get a smart lock. It's like what it is has to be, you have to buy the right one. So I will say pick your PMS before you pick your smart lock, because you need to know what integrations your PMS has in the first place before you start to go out and buy something. And there's not that many options. Sledge is one of the biggest ones. And then you have like Yale and August. Do not get August. I hope they don't see that. August is one of the ones that your batteries die every 2 months. It is not sustainable. So having Yale as one of your option is definitely not worth it. But when it comes to smart locks, there's a little tidbit of information. So you either have a Wi-Fi enabled lock that connects to your internet connection, or you have a smart integration lock, which basically you have a hub inside of your house, which is your smart hub, and it connects to your lock directly. And your lock itself is not smart. It's like the hub itself is smart, and it's triggering the not smart lock to add and delete codes. The difference between the two is that my batteries die on my smart lock every 2 years, if not 2.5 years. And if it was a Wi-Fi version, it dies every 3 months. So it's not even that it's about batteries, it's about the fact that I need to go call a handyman or call someone to change locks to make sure that the things are running like it should, or I just am burning through them, and it's just becoming such a nuisance that the guests are getting a little bit annoyed. I used to have August, and I do get that notification. I still have like a random August locked in my house somewhere, and I get an email, text message like every other day saying, change the locks, change the locks, change the locks. I'm like, I don't even care about that door. It's a special door that really doesn't matter. But it's most definitely something that you don't have. And I'm pretty sure every single person in here has a Wi-Fi enabled lock. And they work, but they do die within 6 months. But yeah, if you go to SmartThings routes with a Z-Wave type lock, you definitely can last at least 2 years on one set of batteries. And smart lights, it depends on how big your place is. Oh, you got a question?
Yeah, on smart locks, you said never use a physical key in a lockbox, but in Chicago, you often need a key to get into the building, and then so how do you deal with that?
So there's two ways. So I'll give it because not everyone from Chicago, but I'll give you the Chicago thing. So most people have like if you have a bigger building, you have a keypad on the outside that you have. Yeah, that too. Yeah, you normally have like a keypad box outside, a call box that you have to scroll to your name and call someone, and then that opens the door. There are programs out there that basically you can set a program to that is a 4-digit code, and when they scroll to your name and call it, it tells them to put in that 4-digit code, and that unlocks the door. And you can automate that also, so you're not setting codes, but it basically that allows you into the building, the very beginning of the building. But yes, if you're in a building that requires you to have a physical key, you have a little bit of an issue there because you have no ability to change the front door, and you have to realize that that's not a great Airbnb property because you don't have control over that door, and they don't have a call box, and yeah. If you own one of those, it might be time for you to get rid of that one because there will be a time when a guest loses the key. It will happen. I literally, we have a secondary key for one of our properties, and we were basically about to take a flight. We were driving to the airport, and I put my hand in my pocket, and the key, that's the secondary key, is the emergency key, it was in my pocket. And I'm like, I myself, with my property, took my own key to the property myself. So I had to turn around, go into the airport, and go drive back home to put the key back into the property. And it's like, if you do it, your guest is going to do it. And as soon as they do it and they get home and the key is not there anymore, it's like you're done. And most people don't have like multiple lock boxes with different keys inside of them. That's a little ridiculous. But yeah, you're in a scenario if you have that scenario happens and you're looking at prospecting a new Airbnb and you want to buy it, you probably will stay away from those doors. And anyone that I do and work with for co-hosting or arbitrage purposes, that is the first thing I look at. Like, how is the access into the property the easiest? Because if it's a difficult way of getting inside of the house, it will not be easy for them, and it will definitely go downhill in the future. So definitely, I'm coming up on time. Lunchtime is coming up. ChatGPT integration. ChatGPT itself is basically integrated into everything. You're in a scenario where inhospitable, in guesty, you can literally click a button, the guest asks a question, you click a button and it will generate a request or reply to you based upon what it knows about your property. So if you don't have that integration currently into your stuff, because not all PMSs have gotten to that point, you definitely can make chatbots and utilize a chatbot to plug in information, but that means you're pulling the information from Hospitable or from your PMS, dropping it into here that gives the information, and then pasting it back. It's not really a way of automated, you're really doing it manual. So you definitely should be looking for a PMS that has the integration already, and if it doesn't, you definitely might need to try something else, because even the cheapest ones now have the integration. But in that scenario, like it literally will reply to a guest. It looks at every single message you've sent in the past and basically come up with an answer based upon what you've said in the past. Half of the time it's too formal, so you have to delete like some of the formalities of hello, I hope this message reached you well, and your name at the bottom, because you want it to sound more like you, and it will change over time that it sounds more like you. But at the current moment, like if you're trying it, it will definitely do more of that. But it's at a point that a guest asks you for parking passes, and it's like I just click the button, it pulls up the draft information about parking passes, and I just send it right away, and you don't really have to think and do anything. So you definitely have to do stuff like that. Digital guidebooks, I could talk about a little bit about it earlier. There are programs out there that has a web-based guidebook, and some have an app-based guidebook. No one wants to download a guidebook. Your guest does not want to download it. No, they don't want to download an app. So if you tell your guests to download an app to get more information about your property, more than likely they won't. And it's not because you want, like, you really need to tell them information. You don't want them to contact you about information. You want them to make it to your guests as easy as possible to get information about your property. So having a guidebook that is a PDF link that you send your guests, or is a web-based guidebook, is something that you need to look into, and not a web-based version. I know some of the app-based versions. Some of the apps, they definitely have some very nice attributes of it, but I don't think they don't understand their market as much, because to tell a 25-year-old to download a new app on their phone when they don't even check their text messages that much, they're not going to do it, and you're going to end up with a lot of questions that's in your guidebook that they're not answering. So for us, like I said, we have a digital version, basically a web page, and we just update the web page with any new information, so they're able to know how to get into the property, find parking, how to turn on the stove, how to turn on the hot tub, how to heat the hot tub, and how to troubleshoot things along the house. And they have videos inside of the guidebook, so the guests are able to look at the videos that you created, and it takes a lot of the questions out of it. And you want to send it to them as early as possible, because without it, they will start asking questions by the time they check in, if before. And like I said, the woman that called me earlier today, she's been asking a lot of questions. And it's not because she didn't see the guidebook, it's the fact is that she's just asking a lot of questions. And you want to try to alleviate that as much as possible. And you're able to put something here together. And not everyone is good at websites, so it's not like you need to be great at websites. You can go on Fiverr and pay someone $100 or less to create a one-page guidebook for you, and that's your template, and you basically can copy and paste it over again for the different properties you have. So you don't really have to go some crazy route, just as long as it's a more than likely it views well on a website, on a computer, or on a web phone, or cell phone. It's your template, and you just update the small things, the photos and stuff. So you don't have to be good at it. You just have to at least pay someone to do it for you for the first time. Okay.
I just want to share, like, on that same lot, like $10 or
Yeah.
$12, it's all done, download.
So we have different versions. We have like a PDF version that people can download, and we have the web version. The web version for us is easier to manage to change, because it is live at all times. But yeah, the PDF version is definitely the easiest way to go, and a lot of people don't realize that they should have it, and also they can use it as a mechanism of squeezing more money out of your guests also. This is about innovating, but it's also about how to pull more money out of your guests. And inside of your guidebook, you can tell them, like, hey, we have kayaks that you can use. You have to pay for it. It's not free. There's a smart lock on the kayak door, and you hit this number here. You scan this here. You pay for your kayaks for the week, for your time, and in an email reply to them, it gives them the code to the door, to the smart lock, and they're able to get the kayaks out. I mean, that's stuff you have to tell them. You either tell them in a text message or you put it in your guidebook. That's their way of getting to it, and that includes everything. Some of the people get to the point that they have cabinets in their homes that is full of snacks, candy, and stuff like that. And the guests will basically just scan a QR code on the door of it, and they're able to open it, and they're able to pay for those items inside of the cabinet through your app and stuff like that. So including with just telling the guests what to do, you also giving yourself an opportunity to upsell on certain items. Like I said, in our guidebook, we do have early check-in and late checkout. So when they go and look in it, they will have the option to, hey, I want to do early check-in, and I can click on early check-in and pay for it directly through the app. So you're not going through Airbnb to do anything like that, and you're not going through any service where it's like you're not Cash Apping me something, because Cash App is not meant for business. Don't use Cash App for business. Don't use Zelle for business, because it's not technically meant for business purposes as much. Zelle is a little bit better, but a lot of these platforms are meant for like friend transactions. They're not FDIC insured, so if they basically say a fraud alert, they'll take the money back and you will not get anything, because it's not meant for business purposes. So like you have a Stripe account in there that is insured, so if you have any fraudulent stuff goes on, you're protected. So that is definitely something you should be doing, but I do know a lot of people just Cash out me $20 for that service, and it's like that's not the way the business should be working. I saw another question somewhere. No, no, no. So once a guest books with you, you can send them links. And so your problem is that you can't send them the digital guidebook because it's a PDF. So you would need to host that guidebook somewhere. So you put it on God knows where. There's a lot of websites you can host like a web page, and you would basically host it on the web page, and you would give the person a link to that web page. So you're not sending a direct PDF document to them. So like most people can buy, our brand is Roam Their Own Spaces. So like we have our website, they go there. For us, we don't need that type of setup, but if you have one page that's meant to be your guidebook section of your website, and you can just have all your guidebooks that are in PDF version, and you can just click and download them from there. But yeah, you cannot send a PDF document to them, so that does make it a little bit complicated, but you can definitely go the route of like hosting it on a website. Like, yes, everyone wants it for free. The fact is that people feel nickel and dimed if you ask them, I had to charge you for heating a hot tub. That's one thing, but when it comes to early check-in and they want to check in at 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 1 p.m., they feel less of a problem with that. If you charge me $100 to check in 30 minutes early, then they might feel a little bit jaded about that. So you should give them a little bit of a leeway. So whatever you feel okay with, to give them like, hey, you want to check in 30 minutes early, up to an hour early, I will give them that without any payment of any kind. But if they want to come in 2 to 3 hours early, I need to contact my cleaner to come in earlier than they should. That's when you start to charge them for that. Dropping your bags off, it depends on if you have a certain area they can drop their bags off in, that can be a feature that you give them for free. If it's something that you now need to put it inside of the property and have all these other things going on, it definitely is something you would need to work on. But for bag drop, we don't really charge for bag drop, but I do know people that will pay for that. I feel that was a little bit more nickel and diming type scenario that's not needed, but if they need to be in the property 4 hours early, charge for that. If they need to drop their bags, you can kind of deal with that, especially if you have an area that would accept their bags.
I always say no to bag drop requests, and I point them to companies that charge $10 to drop your bags. It's a liability that I don't want to take. I don't want to show you the property before it's clean. It's a bad first impression, so I just say no every time.
Yeah. And you'll be surprised, most guests are not vindictive to that nature, like I'm going to give you a 4 or a 3 because you didn't allow me to drop my bags off or check in early when I wanted it for free, when I was asking for an egregious desire in the first place. So it's not as bad, and you still get people that will ask. You can just, like I said, ChatGPT, it will basically tell them like, kindly, no early check-in. Or if you want early check-in, you definitely need to pay for it. And it says it in a manner that is not very aggressive. They say no nicely, so it's not that painful to tell them no. Yeah. Oh, that was my last one anyway, and we're right on schedule. So any more questions?
I didn't want to interrupt at the beginning of the presentation. You said that in Chicago, starting in November, you might move automatically to midterm. Does that then affect your taxing structure of the 7 days or less average?
So it does change your tax structure. So when you book an Airbnb in Chicago that's more than 31 days, 32 days, the hotel fee drops off. So to the guests, they pay less in taxes, but that is aggregated through Airbnb directly. So that's not something you're dealing with. And including your PMS, they know that rule also, so it drops off the city hotel tax also.
But does that affect when you're filing taxes?
No, it would not, because you don't have a long-term tenant, so it's not changing it to a long-term scenario. So from a tax perspective, you're still a short-term rental, even though you're renting it out midterm from a month to 3 months. So you're still okay there, but definitely always talk to your tax consultant. I will give that caveat for myself. But yes, it's not an implication for you. That too. So okay, check your city laws. Right? Never use it. Never use Airbnb's pricing. So the thing is that Airbnb is looking out for their own best interests. Airbnb wants the fees. That's how they make money. So they don't really care about your price. They want fees. So if they get 100% booking, that's all they want. 100% occupancy rate is what their desire is, and they will drop your price to whatever you don't want it to be. So smart pricing through Airbnb, they will only help themselves. You will always be booked. You will be amazing. I'm at a 98 to 99% occupancy rate, but you are also leaving about 40% of revenue on the table. So you go from like, I'm going to use acronyms now. Like a RevPAR number, it's like the number that at the base you need it to be profitable, and that should be at least your floor. So it's like you need to look into like the numbers of like, if it's your own home and it's a long-term rental, and this is how much you make from it, and then you start to make your numbers based upon that needs to be my floor if I book my place out. But you shouldn't be too often at your floor. And if your Airbnb rates are close to your long-term rates, then you have a bad Airbnb. Like there should be a vast difference between your long-term rental breakdown numbers and your STR breakdown numbers. Right. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can set that, and you can also remove everyone as your outliers. You can try to use it at directional more. So Dan has his geodome. He's out there by himself. He's the front runner of it all. So he doesn't have really anyone to look at. So he has to be more cognizant of that. Based on that, his numbers are higher than everyone else. People are still booking him, but it's like Price Labs doesn't have a lot of data to go from. And until you give them a year of data, and then they're looking at your past data to give a notion of this is how much it should be the next year. So your first year is definitely your benchmarking year, but it's definitely using your competitors. But after that, it will start to use its own information about what your property was at that time the year prior. But yeah, we have a property in the same scenario. You said we have an indoor pool in one of ours. Like you're an outlier. It's like almost a 5,000 square foot house that's 9 bedrooms. It's a pure outlier, and no one else has that. I mean, it's one of those scenarios like what do you set your pricing at? Like you kind of have to start to ballpark what you think it will make and see what people are comfortable with and kind of go from there. But I definitely wouldn't use the comp numbers. And if you do try to go that route, at least put like a 2 point something multiplier on what theirs is. Because, I mean, we're looking at almost a $1,500 a night hotel, Airbnb to $2,000 a night, but everyone else is in the 800 range.
So then in the event when there is like special events going on, even though your base price is higher than everybody else, does it know to like even like adjust the price to go higher?
Yes. So basically, when you have Price Labs, it basically has your minimum price, which is just basically the floor, and your higher prices, which is the middle, and then you have your median price, which is basically doing all of its calculations off of. So you're basically saying like this is my price, and then Price Labs is basically saying that okay, demand is higher. I'm going to put a 20% bump on your base price, and then put that there, and it keeps going along that way. So it is basically adjusting the notions of your base price and your minimum price based upon everything around you and how far up when it should give the 20% the notion on things. So it's like you are telling them where to start from, and from where that starting point is going up or down based upon what your competition is doing. Because they're dropping their numbers, you should be dropping yours, and what percentage and stuff like that. So, but yeah, you're in a scenario where there are two types of people here. It's like you have your Airbnb guests that have Price Labs, and then 5 days before they come, before the date that they would check in, if you have availability, it starts dropping the price over time. And then 2 days prior to check-in, someone books. Either you get that type of scenario, or you're in a scenario where it's like your place is very expensive, someone will still book it, but you need to hold strong on your price, and instead of dropping it off, you need to still keep it steady or increase it. You have to really know your market and know your property, knowing that even though the price is still high, you'll still get booked, because most people's setup originally is that the closer you get to the check-in date, the price drops off. So to give an interesting example, I have a friend that has a place in Tampa. He says that majority of his bookings, like at least like 70% plus, are coming within a week. Like I have bookings that my July is already booked out. I have like 17 bookings. No, I have about 9 bookings, 9 in the month of July already. And he's telling me that his July is completely open, and he will not be able to sell July until the end of June. It's like, to me, I would freak out. And Price Labs, how it's set up, it will start dropping the price at that point. But to him, it's like they're willing to still pay a lot more, but they just come later. And if you know your market is like that, as a last-minute market, you definitely need to tame your Price Labs to think about that type of stuff, because if that's the case, you don't want to shortfall yourself and give someone a 20% discount when it should be actually at a 20% in an increase. All right? You kind of have to tell your market. And sometimes, because we'll talk about your market scenario sometimes. So imagine for Cubs games. For us, one of our biggest drivers is Cubs games. So that's the reason why we're getting far out bookings. These people are getting their Cubs tickets early. They're coming in for away games. They're doing it months in advance. But there are some people that you're a weekend getaway place. If you have a property in Galena, which is west of here, and some people, it's like, oh, it's a 3-day weekend coming up, or I have a couple of days off, let's go to Galena. It's only an hour and a half away. If you're in one of those destinations, you will
We're gonna wrap up soon, so everybody just kind of come back, and we'll be ready for the next presentation.
Am I on? Do a quick mic check. Good. Whitney, I got it. It's good. You getting that feedback? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name's Jeff Welgan. I'm with Blueprint Home Loans, and I'm a certified mortgage advisor. And my team and I specialize in helping our clients build and scale their real estate businesses. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to scale your business. I'm going to talk a little bit about the loan programs and the strategies that we use in order to scale your business efficiently. And I'm going to show you how to go from your first door to as many as you can dream of. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about this wild market. To do something like this and bring this to us. So, when they asked me to come speak, I was more than happy to come help out and really try to provide as much value as I can for you guys. And so, just a quick poll: how many properties does everybody own? Let's go 0 to 2 first. Okay, maybe 2 to 5. Okay, 5 to 10. Okay, awesome. 10 plus. Okay, great job. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of get an idea of who I'm talking to. And now for my favorite question: how many of you love the loan process? There's one. See, we've got one great loan officer out there somewhere. It's great to hear. I mean, the reason why that's the case is because working with real estate investors is the most challenging thing you can do in my industry. And most loan officers and companies out there lack the experience level required to do this effectively at scale. And so just to tell you a little bit about myself and my team, I'm a loan officer and the team that helped Tony Robinson with Bigger Pockets build and scale his business. Him and his team were a Bigger Pockets preferred lender. And I am very proud and honored to say that as of the last couple of weeks, I'm officially a Bigger Pockets contributor. I just had 2 podcasts released on the main podcast, number 939 and 943, which I am going to, it goes into detail in what I'm going to talk about today. This is just kind of a surface level of the programs and strategies that we utilize, but those podcasts go into a lot more detail. So if you guys listen to them and have questions, feel free to reach out. And then just to give you the backstory of how I got here. So I've been doing this for 20 years, and I grew up in a real estate investing family down in Southern California. I've worked with investors the majority of my career, and I've always naturally gravitated to them. I love working with real estate investors. I love the mindset. I love the challenge of it. And I'm a real estate investor myself. And so back in the mid-2010s, when I had a group in LA, an investor group, that were the first to see the vision out in Joshua Tree before it hit the LA Times and before it just completely blew up out there, and they bought properties hand over fist before that occurred, and I've been kicking myself ever since then for not following their lead. This has been one of the big missed opportunities of my life. I mean, we all have them, but looking back, it ultimately led me here. It led me to the tiny home builder that does all the tiny homes out there. I became his preferred lender, and then fast forward to when Tony and Sarah were having their problem, getting their start. They were having lender problems. He referred me to them, and the rest is history. And so that ultimately led me here through all of these conferences and everything we've been doing. So I've made it, as a result, my mission to simplify the investor financing process and really break down the barriers to real estate investing and make this as easy as possible for you guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the programs and the strategies now that we use to effectively scale. But before I do, it's important to understand the transition that we've gone through here. Missed a slide. Lending in 49 states, so we're licensed everywhere except for New York. So if you guys want to talk about that afterwards, we can. But the programs we're going to talk about here, we'll start with the primary residence options. And it's important to understand that the transition that has occurred over the last couple of years. It's very unique in history because we're going through a period that's very similar to the period coming out of the Clinton administration through the mid to late 2000s, where the priority was first-time home buyers and low to moderate income families. And there was a lot of down payment assistance money back then. We're going through that same cycle with this current administration where there is more down payment assistance money than we have seen in the last 15 years. And the big difference this time around is that they're making it very expensive and difficult for real estate investors to slow down real estate investors from buying the limited inventory that's out there. So the goal of all of this is, with all this down payment assistance money, is to hopefully free up some inventory, make it as easy as possible, so they're slowing down real estate investors, incentivizing first-time home buyers to really give them an opportunity to experience the American dream. What this means for all of us, is there anybody that doesn't own their primary currently? Anybody that you guys know? It hasn't been this easy in 15 years to buy a primary residence with no money down. We can do anywhere, depending on the state, anywhere between 100 and 105% financing. So like in California, where I am, we can do 105, which means 100% of the purchase price plus 5% of the closing costs. And we have clients that are buying houses with just a few $1,000s. I mean, you have to come in with the appraisal fee, inspection fee, that kind of stuff, and a little bit of the closing costs. It does vary by state because each state has their own housing finance agency, or HFA, and so they make their own rules in each state. The federal government is working on what's called the DPA-1, which is a national program that will be coast to coast, so they can make it a little more consistent. But for right now, we do have one program that allows us to go up to 101.5% financing nationwide. And the good thing about this, or the game changer with this program, was it allows for 2 units. Most down payment assistance programs that you'll look at are limited to 1 unit only, and you have to be a first-time home buyer. With the first-time home buyer rule, it just means that you cannot have owned a home in the last 3 years. It doesn't mean that you can never have been on title before or anything like that. I mean, you don't have to be a true first-time home buyer. Just haven't owned one in the last 3 years, and then you can qualify for these down payment assistance programs. With this 101.5% program that I was mentioning, there's no down payment assistance, no first-time home buyer requirement. So this was a game changer for real estate investors. So you can own real estate right now, use down payment assistance to buy your next primary residence, and do up to 101.5% financing. And the big one with this is they allow for up to 2 units. So we can use this program to buy a duplex and use the rent from the second unit to help you qualify for that purchase. And so what this is leading me to is the annual move-up strategy. This is the way that most real estate investors will get their start. It's always been around, but what the big difference is with this down payment assistance money is you can come in, buy your first property with no money down, live in it for a year, and then buy your next property. So you can have 2 properties within 2 years. You can do duplexes on each one, and then you can do this every year. I have one client that has done this 8 times in the last 10 years. He finally got married, and his wife put her foot down, and they're done moving. But if you guys have the flexibility and the option of moving every year, this is the way to build your business with the least amount of out-of-pocket, or least amount of capital that's required, because you can do down payment assistance on the first one, anywhere between 3.5% and 5% down on the next one, and continue to do this on an annual basis. What you can do, one of the other programs that just opened up that it was an absolute game changer for investors is the 5% down units option for 2 to 4 units with Fannie Mae. This, for all intents and purposes, allows us to acquire 12 doors within 2 years. And the way you can do that is with this 5% down option, it allows us to go in and buy up to 4 units with 5% down, and you can do this every year. So you can go buy a 4 unit, live in one of them as your primary residence, use the rent from the other units to help you qualify for the first purchase, then buy your next one 12 months later. You've got 8 doors in 1 year and 12 months. You can use the rent from your departing residence. So that unit you're leaving, you can use that to help you qualify for the next one, and then you can do this again the following year. So you can, theoretically, if you do this strategically and have the right plan in place, you can have 12 doors within 2 years. And the big game changer with this program specifically was, the option on the FHA side, the 3.5% down, which I'm sure all of you guys have heard about. That program has been there for years, but the problem with that 3.5% down FHA loan is there's what's called a self-sufficiency test, where we would have to look at all of the units combined. This is only for 3 and 4 units, but when you're buying a multifamily like this using that FHA option, we are required to look at the total rent of all of the units, and that has to cover the all-in PITI and mortgage insurance, so principal, interest, taxes and insurance, and mortgage insurance. If it covers, great. If not, then you don't pass the self-sufficiency test and end up having to put a larger down payment down. So you can imagine with rates going up, it's been very hard recently to pass this self-sufficiency test. And then the closer you get to the coast or the higher purchase price markets like Chicago, good luck getting these to pass with these higher rates. And so this is where this 5% down option on the Fannie Mae side completely changed the game, because there's no self-sufficiency test. So we're not looking at that same calculation, and it's made it a lot easier to buy units with a lot less down, because it used to be on the Fannie Mae side 25% down. The next programs I'm going to talk about are the preferred methods to scale for real estate investors. The first one is the infamous 10% down vacation home loan. I'm sure you guys have all heard of it. Most of you have probably used it. I always like to dedicate a slide to the guidelines, because there is so much information out there on this program, and my goal is to just provide clarity and try to cut through some of the noise. So this is straight out of the Fannie Mae handbook. These are the guidelines, and when you look at the 10% down vacation home loan, it's important to understand that this was originally intended to be a vacation loan for vacation properties. People that wanted to buy properties in the mountains or the beach or the lake. It was never intended to be an investment property. And what's happened over the last 5 to 10 years, it's turned into this quasi-investment property loan. The government's been fully aware of it. They know. They took a good 2-year period to look at ways to tighten the screws on the guidelines, potentially get rid of it entirely, to really try to slow down real estate investors from using this program, because it limits the amount that you have to come in with for a down payment, and it's a much faster speed to scale with this program than some of the other programs that require larger down payments. And so with this program specifically, what the government did with in their infinite wisdom is came out with a broad brush and just made it synonymous with investment property financing. And so what that means is they left the program in place. That's the good news. We can still do them. They've just made them significantly more expensive than they've ever been in history. So they used to only be about 1/8 to 1/4 higher to rate than primary residence financing. Now they're 3/4 of a point to a point, depending on where the market is. And so this was intended to slow down real estate investors from using this program to hopefully free up some inventory for some of the first-time home buyers and low to moderate income families that I mentioned. And then as far as the guidelines are concerned, I know you guys have heard the 2-week rule. Everybody's heard that. It's an IRS tax rule. It's not an underwriting rule. The guideline literally is this vague. Some portion of the year it needs to be used for personal use. And what we recommend is 2 to 4 weeks a year, just to be on the right side of this. You use it for personal use, you, your family, friends. You can rent it the entire time that you're not there on a short or midterm strategy. You just can't do a long-term strategy. And there's no set limit on how long you can actually rent this when you're not there with Fannie Mae. If you guys have heard that 180 rule, the 6-month rule, that's a Freddie Mac requirement. They limit it to 180 days. On the Fannie Mae side, there's no limit, so we naturally sell all these to Fannie Mae. And then it is restricted to 1 unit only, so no duplexes, tris, or quads, but you can buy a single family with an ADU, so keep that in mind. That is still considered 1 unit, and we can do those on second homes. And then it must be suitable for year-round occupancy, so no seasonal properties that get snowed in and don't have access, that kind of stuff. And then the questions I get all the time are about the next 3, about management control. And you can't do timeshare agreements. You must maintain exclusive control of the property. You can have a management company come in and help you out with it and run it, but you have to maintain control over that calendar. So where you can schedule it for your personal use, you need to have that ability. Otherwise, it turns into a true investment property, and you need to use the next program that I'm going to talk about. Did we just time out? Did we lose? There we go. Okay, next program is the 15% down Fannie Mae investor loan. This is the true investment property loan. With this program, by putting that extra 5% down, it takes all of the second home loan guidelines and restrictions out of the equation, and it turns into a true investment property loan where you can rent it 365 days out of the year. You can, there's no radius rules. One of the things I forgot to mention, on the second home loan, there's that 50-mile radius rule, where you cannot use that 10% down vacation home loan anywhere you own real estate, so 50 miles from your primary, and then more importantly, as you're setting up and entering new markets as operators, you can only use the 10% down vacation home loan once, because you can't go in and do a second home loan in an area where you already own real estate. So when you're entering a new market, use the 10% down vacation home loan, and then any other properties that you're buying in that area, you use the 15% down investment property loan, because there's no radius requirement with that 15%. You can also, with the 15% down option, rent it 365 days out of the year. There's no personal use requirement. And more importantly, with this program, the big difference is we can use the forecasted rent to help you qualify, where on the 10% down vacation home loan, it's a personal use loan. We can't use any rent to help you qualify, so it's a full hit to your debt to income ratio, or limiting your buying power right out of the gate. And it is a full hit until you file it on a tax return at the following year. So you can imagine during that period where you buy that property to when you file a tax return, it's limiting your ability to buy your next property. So the workaround on this for our clients that are looking to scale faster is the 15% down option. And by putting that extra 5% down, we're able to use the forecasted rent at the time of purchase, and then we're also able to use that rent during that time period from when you purchase the property to when you file your tax return. So it has a much faster speed to scale on the 15% downside, because by you being able to use that forecasted rent, it basically doubles your buying power. So when you figure if you can qualify in the 10% downside for about $500,000, by putting that extra 5% down, it's going to double it on average to about $1 million, and so you can scale up much quicker. Can you talk more about the forecasted rent? Sure. Yeah, great question. So yeah, that's a great question. So it varies by lender. A lot of lenders will have their own underwriting overlays. We've been on the forefront with this, and we sell loans directly to Fannie Mae. So we're able to use short, mid, or long-term rent. And it depends on the program, the approach that we do, but specifically with the 15% down, any of the conventional options, we are looking at what the appraiser puts on the appraisal, the rent survey on the appraisal, but we can specify that we want a short-term rental analysis. And then we're able to, just like on the long-term side, be able to use 75% of that to help you qualify. Any other questions? Yeah, all right, great question. All right, so with the 15% down, much faster speed to scale, because you've got to, once again, you remember the 10% down, it's limiting in the sense where when you buy that first property, it ties up your buying power until it's on a tax return. 15%, you scale up much quicker. With all of these programs that I've talked about so far, with the primary residence financing, the 10 and the 15% down conventional options, the max is 10 finance properties. So I'm sure you guys have heard that rule. You can, so let's say you and your significant other or your partner, as long as you qualify independently, you can do 10, your partner can do 10, and you can do up to 20, or any combination thereof. So there's a way to get very strategic with this as you're building and scaling your business to minimize the amount that you need to come in with for the down payment, because any of the other alternatives, which I'm going to get to next, we're going to require larger down payments and have higher interest rates. So those conventional products are going to maximize your cash-on-cash return and, more importantly, your cash flow. So the next programs I'm going to get into are the non-conventional products. So for you guys that have gotten to the point where you've scaled up to 10 and you've hit your limit, then we go look at the non-conventional products like the DSCR loan. I'm sure you guys have heard of it, used it. For anybody that doesn't, DSCR stands for Debt Service Coverage Ratio. It's a mouthful. It definitely doesn't roll off your tongue. But it is the preferred method for investors to scale up past that 10 loan property. And it is the product or the loan program that's used on the commercial real estate side that has been adapted for residential real estate for business purposes only, which means we can only do investment properties. You can't buy a primary residence with this. You can't buy a second home, because we are looking at the property as a business and the cash flow analysis of that business. All we're looking at, we're not looking at your income, we're not looking at your employment, your debt to income ratio. We're looking at that property's ability to cash flow. And so we are looking at the forecasted rent, either on a short, mid, or long-term basis, With the short-term rent, we can use AirDNA. That's the gold standard for on the lending side. And with that, as long as the rent, the forecasted rent, is covering the all-in mortgage payment, the PITI and A if there's association dues, the minimum down right now for strong properties in strong markets is 15%. It finally started coming back. This 15% down option evaporated after March of 2022, and it just started coming back on a very limited basis, which is great news because it's a leading indicator of the risk appetite of the secondary market. And we're starting to see it really come back, and I think within the next probably 6 months or so, we're going to be able to do these loans, the 15% down option, with more frequency. So for right now, most properties that we are looking at are still limited to the 20% down, which means, you know, you need to be covering. You need to make sure that the property is cash. Go ahead. No, it's okay. No, unfortunately not. No, it's all purchase money actually, not even rate and term refinances at this point. But we can look at it on a short or long-term basis. But the restrictions on the short-term rental side, I think it's 70, I always get these backwards, 70% occupancy rate, 65% market score, or maybe reversed. So very strong short-term rental markets. We've looked at a number of them we've got a couple down in Florida, Tennessee. There's been a couple out in California and a few markets, but it's a high bar right now. But that will improve. And then same thing on the long-term side. It needs to have a DSCR of 1 or above, which just means that rent needs to cover that payment by at least $1 or more to have that ratio of 1 and above. Anything that has a sub 1 DSCR, like a property that is not cash flowing, that's usually going to put you somewhere around 25% down typically. And we can even go down to a 0.75. I don't want to get deep in the weeds on the guidelines, but you can buy properties that are negatively cash flowing, and there are options for that. So just keep that in mind. But as of right now, most properties that we're looking at are still at that 20% down or 80% loan to value threshold on either a short, mid, or long-term analysis. And then what I like to get into here I get questions about closing in an LLC all the time and the due on sale clause, and I really try to provide clarity to both of these because I know there's a lot of misinformation out there. The first one, all of the non-conventional products like the DSCR and a few that I'm going to talk about here in a minute, we're able to close directly into an LLC, which just basically means we're not closing it in your name, we're closing it in the LLC. There's options with no personal guarantee, so it's not showing up on credit, so it's not impacting your ability to buy properties using your debt-to-income ratio, your personal credit, and they're very easy on the non-conventional side. The question I always get, where there's very little clarity, is on the conventional side, where the restrictions are with this. First thing I always like to say is this is not a government rule when it comes to the due on sale. It's in there for us. We have that in the contract as the lender, and we have the ability to enforce that. So what we're looking for here on our side, with us as my company as a servicer, we allow clients to move properties into an LLC for protection purposes as long as you stay a majority managing member of that LLC. So with conventional financing, you record in your name. We're required to. The government requires that we record in your personal name, but then you can move it into the LLC for protection purposes as long as you remain a majority managing member. The reason being is because of the foreclosure rule. If you become a minority member or you do one of these sub-2 deals, which I'll talk about in a second, it makes it very difficult from a lending standpoint to foreclose. And so that is why this is in the contract. But as long as you're still, like I said, majority managing member, you're perfectly fine there. And then the due on sale. That is in there for sub-2s. I mean, let's just call it what it is. You guys have been hearing a lot about the creative stuff. Everybody knows Pace Morby. On the sub-2s, this is let me put my lender cap on now. As a lender, if we find out that you are doing a purchase, sub-2 purchase or selling a property, and it gets caught, we're going to enforce that due on sale. Now, putting on my investor cap now, it's a great strategy. It's perfectly legal. But the only way it's going to get caught, or it ever does get caught, is if you miss the payments or if the taxes and the insurance aren't paid on time. So as long as those get paid on time, nobody's investigating this right now. The only time it really ever comes up is during recessions like we saw in 2008. There was a lot of due on sales that were enforced back then. But as long as, I try to stay out of the creative stuff for the most part, but as long as going back to moving in that conventional loan into an LLC, as long as it's just for protection purposes, you're fine. And the way I like to explain this is I have clients that have called some of the bigger banks and they have said, no, you can't move it into an LLC. Investor cap again. I personally recommend this is a situation where it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Reason being is because what's riskier? If you look at it from just a strictly risk analysis standpoint, keeping, especially with you guys running short-term rentals, you guys are running mini hotels, you're exposing yourself to a lot of risk, especially if you're keeping it in your name. You got people coming in and out all the time. If something happens and somebody sues you, they're going to come after you personally, and they're going to come after you, all of your assets. So what's riskier? Leaving yourself unprotected, even with a large umbrella policy, or moving it into the LLC with the, if it ever occurs where the due on sale gets enforced. And let's just say 5 years down the road, if my industry, sentiment changes and we all decide to start enforcing due on sales for moving in for protection purposes, all you have to do is remedy the situation. We don't want the collateral back. We're not going to foreclose as long as you're in contact with the servicer. All you got to do is pull it back out of the LLC, refinance the loan with one of these non-conventional products, which I'm going to continue to talk about in a second, and remedy the situation. So just looking at it from that standpoint, I again try to provide clarity here because I think it is far riskier to have these properties in your personal name than the what-if potential of having to pull it out of an LLC and refinance it at a later date. All right, so I'm going to get back to some of the non-conventional products. The next one is the business bank statement loan. Do we have any business owners out there? Okay, awesome. So have you guys had trouble qualifying for conventional financing? You all have, I know. It's, it's the big benefit of being able, being self-employed and running a business is you get to write everything off, pay very little in taxes, but it doesn't always put you in the best position to qualify for conventional financing. So this is your workaround. We can look at 12 to 24 months bank statements, total up the income, divide it over that time period, and that's the income that we can use minus an expense factor. Depending on the type of business, there's an expense ratio that we have to hit it for. It's like a realtor working in their house has much lower overhead than, let's say, a restaurant. So there is a quick calculation, but this is the way that we get business owners qualified for financing that without having to take a look at their bank statements. So just keep that in mind as you guys are moving forward. This is a great program, and I know not all lenders offer this out there. And then the next one gets very little coverage. I don't hear anybody talking about this one. It's the asset qualifier loan. This is a great product for anybody that has either maxed out your debt-to-income ratio or may not be working or are working part-time or have limited income. We can look at assets as income. And what we do is we total up any liquid assets, including retirement accounts, investment accounts, checking, savings, money market, you name it. And what we do is we total them all up. There's a conversion that we do, or a calculation, where we can create a debt-to-income ratio. And the best part with this program is we're not touching any of the money. We're not collateralizing the loan. It is literally just total everything up, do the calculation. And this is a great way to bridge the gap if you're having debt-to-income ratio issues and you're hitting your limit. And then the next programs, fix and flip, fix and hold, fix and flip loans have started making a comeback. They really slowed down over the last couple of years for obvious reasons with what's been going on in the market. But a lot of investors are stepping back into this space. And during the last couple of years, what had happened, because the flip strategy, exit strategy, wasn't as effective as it was a couple years prior, the couple years leading up to it, a lot of investors were coming in, using this money to fix the property and then stabilize it and then turn it into a short, mid, or long-term rental. And that's a perfectly acceptable exit strategy. So just keep that in mind. If you guys have properties that you're looking at that are not turnkey and you guys are looking to do some work on them, this is a great program. Keep in mind there's no experience needed with these. So you can come in as a newbie flipper or fix and hold, and there is money available. The terms are a little bit worse than, say, somebody that has experience, because in this space, these are hard money bridge loans. They're 12-month loans, and the goal is to get you in and out as quickly as possible. And we're not looking at your debt-to-income ratio. We're not looking at your employment. We're just looking at the project and the numbers of the project and your experience and liquidity. Experience and liquidity is your credit in this case. And so the more experience you have, the better the terms, the higher the leverage, or the more we're willing to lend. And but just keep in mind, when you're just starting out, there is money available. So don't let that scare you. I mean, it's just a little bit higher of a rate. And then the next program on the renovation side, I never hear anybody talking about, and this is an incredible program. This is the government renovation option. It's called the Fannie Mae Homestyle. It is not the FHA 203K. I'd just like to get that out of the way. Everybody that knows about the FHA 203K knows what a pain that loan is, and it's because there's a HUD advisor involved that's a bureaucrat that comes in, oversees everything, and slows everything down and makes everybody's life a living nightmare. So any experienced realtors out there know, anytime they see an offer come with the 203K, they're gonna look at any other offer possible before taking that one. With the Fannie Mae Homestyle, there is no HUD advisor involved. It is a much easier process. I've got a team in-house that manages these directly with your contractor. And the best part with these is it follows conventional guidelines. So it's a 30-year fixed. It's not bridge financing. This is a true 30-year fixed at the time of funding. The rates follow conventional rates. So wherever rates are, it's the same rates on these. And it follows the same down payment requirements. So 5% down on units, on a primary, 10% down on a vacation home, and 15% on an investment. So it's a great option for people that are coming in, like yourselves, operators that want to stabilize a property or come in and do some work. We can do light to moderate rehab with these. You can do pool additions. You can do ADUs. This has been a big one. We're doing a lot of these now. You can come in and do kitchen, bathroom remodels. You just can't do any heavy rehab. So no square footage additions, no adding a second story, but you can do landscaping. You can do just about anything under the sun. And the sky's the limit with these, with the exception of furniture. I get this question all the time from short-term rental operators. We cannot finance in furniture because it's personal property. So just keep that in mind. And then the next thing I want to talk about here is these high rates we've all been contending with. I'm going to get into the market here in a few minutes, but it's looking more and more like these rates aren't going anywhere. These higher rates are sticking around for a little longer than we'd all like. So there's some strategies, very effective strategies that we are utilizing and have been over the last couple of years to help beat these higher rates and maximize cash flow. And really it can go from, be the difference of qualifying for a property or not, or having a property that's cash flowing or not at the time of acquisition. So the first one are the two seller credit strategies that we use, the buy down strategies. There's a permanent buy down option and a temporary. So with this, what we do is we build in a seller credit either through the purchase price or through a repair credit when we get the inspection. Depending on the program, we can do anywhere between a 2% and a 9% seller credit. And we can do one of two things with this credit. The first one is a permanent buy down. And the example I like to use is a 10% down vacation home loan because we can do up to a 6% seller credit on this. And it's meaning the difference of a rate close to 8% now versus a rate in the high sixes if we can get that full 6% seller credit. So you can really see the benefit of that, and it's really helping with short-term rental cash flow analysis. The other alternative is have you guys heard of the 1-1 or the 2-1 buy down? Okay, there's actually a 1-1, a 2-1, and a 3-1. And with these, what we have to do is build in about a 2% seller credit, give or take. And what we do with that seller credit is prepay the interest for 2 years. And so it's a step-up program. So let's just say the rate's 7.5%. The first year, the rate or the payment's going to be based off of a rate of 5.5. Second year goes up to 6.5. Second year goes up to the note rate of 7.5. And the goal of both of these strategies is to buy time while we're waiting for rates to come down. And so this is really, again, helping with cash flow analysis for our operators that are looking to, obviously try to create as much cash flow as possible while we're waiting for rates to come down to eventually refinance. The next thing I want to talk about is cash out refinances. I'm sure all of you guys as experienced operators know how challenging and expensive it is to get cash out right now, especially on the investment side. The reason for this is because the current administration is really trying to make it as difficult as possible and as expensive as possible to take cash out, because leading up to the Great Recession, people were using their homes as ATM machines. I mean, we had clients that were coming in, we were paying off $30,000 in credit card debt, and they were calling us 3 months later, and we were paying off the same credit cards and doing that over and over again. It was incredible. So what the government has done is taken a page out of history, and they've learned the lesson, and they're really trying to slow down people from taking the equity out of their house. I know there's a lot of lenders out there that are trying to talk you out of, your 2% or 3% loans. I always recommend that's the last resort. So, a cash out refinance, whether it's a primary or investment, should be the last resort. There are home equity lines out there on primaries that are free. I mean, there are local regional banks and credit unions that are doing free HELOCs. They pay for the appraisal. There's no closing costs. The rates are up around 8.5%. But when you do the analysis on it in comparison to paying points on a cash out refinance, it makes a lot more sense to take a home equity line and pay the higher rate while we wait for rates to come down. So that's where I always recommend starting. Second place, take a look at your investment accounts, your portfolio. You can take out lines of credit against your portfolio and use that money instead of obviously doing the cash out refinance. There are also limited home equity lines out there that I've heard of. We don't do them, but limited on investment properties that the terms are terrible on them, but they are out there if you guys can find them. And it's typically local regional banks and credit unions that are down in specific areas that are willing to take that risk, because if they have to foreclose, they know they can sell the property. So just keep that in mind. It's worth calling around if you guys are trying to find home equity lines on an investment property. And then lastly here, 401k loans. In normal markets, I'm not a huge advocate of 401k loans and touching retirement, but given the circumstances where we are right now, it is a great way to generate or come up with capital if you guys need to. If you're looking for your next purchase, I mean, it's much cheaper money than doing a cash out refinance again. So again, the cash out refi should be the last resort, but I will caveat to this, don't wait until you're falling behind on stuff to refinance and do the cash out refinance, because once you start falling behind on credit cards and mortgages and stuff like that, it becomes much more challenging from our standpoint. So if you guys have questions there, let me know. And then lastly here, the refi strategy. I get the question all the time, well, when rates come down, every time I refinance, do I have to pay closing costs again? The answer to that is no. And what we do every time, we've been in peaks and valleys like this over the last 20 years, every time rates go up, looking at the period from 2015 through 2019, rates had come up to the mid-5s. As soon as COVID hit and 2020 came around, rates fell off a cliff. What we do is we refinance those loans on no closing cost loans every time our clients are saving about $100 to $150 a month. So you guys can take advantage of the lower rates without having to pay all of those closing costs. And the way that we do this collectively as an industry is we raise the rate by about 1/8 to 1/4, and then we get a spread on the back end of the loan that we can apply toward your closing costs. And so as you're riding the market down, you can take advantage of it that way without, basically leaving with a very similar loan balance that you're coming in with and not having to tack on $3,000 to $5,000 every time you refinance. Let's see what we got. Okay, now for the market. I'm going to ask a question. How many of you over the last couple of years have heard the market is going to crash? I know this is a stupid question. It's great to see the media finally putting out the correct information. And we've been saying this for a couple of years. The market, this is not 2008 all over again. This is a totally different set of circumstances. You're looking at 2008, we were doing terrible loans. There were systemic issues in my industry, and the builders built way too many homes because of all the speculation going on. This time around, we have a significant, extreme shortage in homes. We're about 3 to 5 million homes short right now, and it's going to take the builders years to build our way out of this, and we are doing much better loans collectively. We were doing probably 80% bad loans before the Great Recession. I think I'm being optimistic on that side, and then now we're doing probably 90, 95% good loans. So the likelihood of any type of reoccurrence of that is very slim. And when you look at the part of this that doesn't get a lot of exposure or enough traction in the media is that when you look back at the birth rate back in the 80s, there was a birth spike, mid to late 80s. All of those younger adults have been coming of age, needing a place to live, and the institutional investors have been seeing this coming. So that is why we see all these institutional investors buying real estate hand over fist. They've been waiting for this opportunity, and they were taking advantage of it over the last 5 to 10 years. So when we look at where things are right now as far as the market, the Fed, interest rates, everybody wants to know, when are rates coming down? That is the number one question I get. When? We want to know the day and time. It's looking like it is going to be longer than we all would like, because unfortunately inflation is proving to be far stickier than the Fed anticipated and what we all anticipated. And this last mile is proving to be the most difficult. And so the Fed is in a very challenging position right now. I'm not envious of any of them because they're at a point where the economy is still going strong, inflation's still there, it's not going anywhere, and they have no incentive to lower the Fed funds rate, but there's a lot of pressure on them at the moment to start doing something about this. And the problem is, you look back at history, they don't want to make the same mistake as the 70s and the 80s. When you look back to that time period, the Fed took their foot off the gas too quickly, they reversed monetary policy too early, and when they did, they lowered the Fed funds rate, inflation took off, and caused much bigger issues, and rates went up to 18%. So this time around, the Fed's really been putting out that narrative of higher for longer. We are going to keep rates higher for longer, and what they're waiting for right now is GDP numbers to start to wane, which we saw last week, but that report did show that inflation is still far stickier than we'd like, and they're waiting for significant decreases in the unemployment numbers. We've got a jobs number coming out this week, the Fed's meeting this week, so we'll see what happens. But as of right now, all of the forecasting has pushed the first rate decrease to most likely September. And my feeling is, we're in an election year. I stay out of politics. You'll never see me step into politics. But with where the Fed is right now, they don't want the optics or they don't want to be perceived as trying to impact this election. So for right now, they don't have a reason to start lowering the Fed funds rate anytime soon because they use that Fed funds rate to stimulate the economy, and the economy is still, quote unquote, strong. So, well, I know it doesn't feel like it all the time, but for looking forward toward this election, if they were to start lowering the Fed funds rate too soon or too quickly, it would have that optics or that appearance of trying to influence this election, and they're an independent organization, so that's the last thing that they want. So we'll probably see rates start coming down maybe in Q4 or after the election and going into next year. I'm feeling it the earliest, but this could all change. Keep that in mind. We're at a point right now where there's a lot going on a macro level. We've got a couple of wars going on that could get larger, that could impact things. There's problems on the commercial side of my industry right now that the government's quietly trying to clean up behind the scenes. There could be things, that occur, like a black swan event. We could see rates start coming down tomorrow, next week, next month, if something were to give, or if we start seeing bad employment numbers, or a reason for the Fed to really start lowering the Fed funds rate. But as of right now, all signs are pointing toward rates somewhere in the, let's call it high sixes to maybe mid sevens, unless we start seeing inflation heat up. And they're going to be here for the foreseeable future. But this is creating opportunities for those that are paying attention. Really, the only thing that's changed here over the last couple of years, is that this is the fastest that mortgage rates have gone up in history. And so if you look back prior to March of 2022, we had a laundry list of pre-approved buyers that are now either stuck on the sidelines because they can't qualify, or they're watching too much news and they're still waiting for the real estate market to collapse. And so the smart investors have been buying properties, the ones that they're still able to, they're still cash flowing and finding the right opportunities. And because they've seen what's occurred over the last 2 years, the beginning part of the year. As rates have dipped, we saw it at the beginning of this year, we saw it at the beginning of last year. As rates dipped down into the low to mid sixes, the demand side picked up, the buyers that could started jumping back in. And ultimately, as we start seeing rates come down eventually, the inflection point we see coming is going to be somewhere between, it was the mid fives, my feeling is probably going to be somewhere around 6, where we're going to see a lot of buyers jump back in because they're going to, A, know that the market's not going to collapse, B, we're slowly coming out of this at that point, and it's going to push up the demand side, which points to higher property values in the long term. I saw a couple of stats here that just recently blew me away. The first one, 72% of people are still waiting, or they're on the sidelines waiting for rates to come down. These are the same people that were waiting for the market to crash the last 2 years. So just think about when they start moving back into the market again. And then secondly, every time rates come down 1%, 5 million more people are going to be able to qualify. So it's a huge number, and this is why over time, real estate values are going to continue to go up. Not saying they're never going to come down again in history, just not in this market cycle. And this is why real estate has been one of the best performing asset classes in history. So if you guys want to follow along, I'm Jeff the Mortgage Expert on Instagram. Here's all my contact info, team info. And then do we have any loan originators by any chance in the audience? Anybody that's in the mortgage industry? No? Any realtors? Yeah, guys, congratulations on making it through the most difficult market that we've seen in a very long time. So congrats on that. And then are there any questions that I can answer? I've covered a lot of ground here. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm kind of blinded by the light a little bit. Mhm. So what type of programs? What about, I'm sorry, you're asking me about the business bank statement loan, but I think I'm. Yeah, oh, P&L, yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we use the business bank statements and the P&L. We do have P&L loans as well. And then for the bank statements that we look at, they can be business or personal. So we're looking at the accounts. If you're running all your business income through a personal account, we can use that as well. Where we run into problems, especially for your short-term rental operators, is we're limited to 2 bank accounts. So for you guys that may have relay accounts where you've got 20 different accounts for different properties, we can't use all of those accounts. It just becomes too much paperwork, and the investors limit it to 2 on the secondary market. But that's really the only consideration. Was there any other questions? Who's for? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. So we're looking at the as-is value, and then what the renovation budget is, and then what the ARV is. So on the home style, what's nice about it, because it is a one-time close, there's not that 25 to 30% exit that we need on the bridge. So in bridge financing, we need to make sure that there's enough room to where you're going to be able to either refinance or sell on the other end. With the home style, as long as that the ARV comes in at the total cost, which the acquisition plus the renovation budget, as long as it is there or higher, we're perfectly fine because we're not worried about an exit because it's a 30-year fixed one-time close. So there's a lot more room on that side that's would never be allowed, obviously, on the fix and flip side. For the LTARV? So on the bridge financing, yeah, depending on experience, it can range anywhere from 70 to 80%. Any other questions? Gotcha. Yeah, it's a great question. So if you've been in operation, we'll just take your Airbnb and VRBO printouts for that short-term rental, and then the long-term, we're just going to look at the lease or what's been filed on the tax return. This is really more of a consideration during that first year when you've purchased the property, because once it's on a tax return, we're just going to take whatever's on the Schedule E and do the normal calculation with that. But for that first year, so let's just say at the time of acquisition, we're going to look at it either through a short-term or a long-term basis. You're going to get, depending on the program, a little bit better pricing if we're looking at it from a long-term perspective versus a short-term, especially on the non-conventional side. I mean, there's short-term, calculation is a little riskier, so there's a risk adjustment to the rate. On the conventional side, there's no risk adjustment. It's looked at the same way. Whatever comes back on that appraisal is what we're going to be able to use. So that's really the big difference. But if you're talking about a property that you already own, we can use, the average. So we like to see a minimum of a year in operation for short-term rentals. There are exceptions that are made for properties within 6 months to a year. And then the long-term is very easy because that's a long-term lease, and we can just use 75% of that. And then on midterm stuff, for anybody that's doing midterms, as long as it's over 30 days, we're perfectly fine. It's looked at the same way as the long-term analysis on the midterm, as long as you have a lease agreement that's 30 days or more. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I'm going to be honest with you. I saw the headlines. I haven't had a chance to read it. We just got done with another event down in Puerto Rico, and it's been a quick 2 weeks for me. I'm going to do a deeper dive when we get home, but I don't know. I try to stay out of politics. It's another what if. I mean, who knows? If he gets back into office, who knows what he's going to do? You know, I think I'm just going to stay out of it. I'm gonna leave that alone. Yeah, so it just can't exceed the loan limits for the county. So, you know, what is it, what is it now? Sorry, it's been a long few weeks. 7 and change is the limit in most places. In Southern California, it's $1,049,000 now. So as long as it doesn't exceed, and then on units, that's one part, I'm glad you brought that up. On units now, there are higher loan limits. So like on that 4-unit option I was talking about, scaling up to 12 doors, we can go in the higher purchase price markets, we can go all the way up to $2.2 million with that purchase, because when you look at the loan limits, it's higher for a duplex than it is 1 unit, and then it's higher for 3. I don't know them all by memory, but the more doors, the higher the loan limit, and it's just something to keep in mind. So it's not just that, you know, normal 700 or million. Yeah, it's a full doc. I mean, it's a conventional product, so we're going to be looking at your debt to income ratio and ability to repay.
A lot of investors graduate from single-family homes to hotels and campgrounds and stuff. Do you guys have any products?
I don't, but I have friends. So we can do, for instance, I can easily do up to 10 units. I even have an investor that will go up to a 10 million exposure. I won't get into the details, but basically 200 doors on the commercial side. I personally try to stay out of it because it's not what I specialize in. But I do, over the last 20 years, I have people that I refer to that I trust. So in that space, I mean, you guys see what Tony's doing probably and everything they're doing, so I can put you in touch with those guys. Yeah, awesome. Any other questions? Anybody else? Oh, yeah, go ahead. I'll stand up here all day. No. That's a great question. So we don't recommend contractors. I can go back, you know, in areas that we do a lot of business in, I can find out who we use and then give you that information. But you can go find any contractor as long as it's arm's length, which means just can't have the same last name as you. It can't be your dad, brother, cousin, that kind of thing. And the contractors need to be in good standing. We need to be licensed. But it's a pretty easy vetting process, and we're quick. So one of the questions I always get about this program and then the 203K, a lot of contractors that have had bad experiences with other lenders in the past say that we don't get any money up front, we have to get the project moving, it's slow to get reimbursed. We do have a contingency built in to get the project going, and we're quick to reimburse. So that's one of the resistance or pain points for contractors that have used these products in the past. But other than that, you can use anybody you'd like. It just depends on the scope, scope of work and how many needs. We try to minimize, obviously, the amount of times that we have to send the inspector out to verify the work's been completed. But I mean, you can break it up. I mean, it's really at the contractor's discretion and how quickly we need to send the inspector back out to keep the job moving. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I'm going to be here all day. So if you guys have questions, I'm going to leave you guys with this. So you guys, please treat me and my team as a resource. We're here for you guys. And there are truly no stupid questions. I mean, we're an open book. You guys feel free to ask us anything. And before I leave, I just want to let you guys know that I tend to be a bit of an introvert. So getting up here like this is not natural for me. It took me a lot of practice and hard work to be able to do something like this. And when I look back, over the last few years, the one thing that I did that changed everything for me is when I went all in on getting comfortable being uncomfortable. So I'm going to leave you guys with a challenge. I challenge you guys to push yourself out of your comfort zone as often as possible, because success is and always has been on the other side of our comfort zones, and where there's a will, there's always a way.